Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was born with the power of Kaguya, Primordial Naruto. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Divine Birthright. The sky above Konoha fractured with strange light. Crimson auroras twisted through the night, forming patterns unseen for 1,000 years. Stars pulsed with unusual intensity, their ancient light seeming to converge on the small hidden village. In the Hokage Tower, Hiruzen Sarutobi stood at the window, pipe forgotten in his hand, watching the heavens with growing unease. The astronomers report nothing like this in recorded history. Homura murmured beside him, "Some are calling it an omen." Of what? Hiruzen asked, though the question was more rhetorical than genuine. The timing was impossible to ignore. Kushina Uzumaki's seal would be at its weakest tonight. The Anbu report civilians gathering at the temples, Kaharu added from her position at the table. Religious fervor spreads like wildfire on nights like these. The third Hokage turned from the window. Double the guard on Kushina. I want our best sealing experts standing by. Whatever this means, we cannot allow the Nine Tails to break free. As the elders nodded and departed, Hiruzen found himself alone with his thoughts. Minato had chosen a remote location for the birth, but something in the Hokage's bones told him preparations would not be enough. Not tonight, not under this impossible sky. Miles away, deep in a cave reinforced with seals and guarded by elite Anbu, Kushina Uzumaki struggled through the final stages of labor. Her crimson hair, slick with sweat, splayed around her like a halo of blood. The complex seal on her abdomen warped and pulsed as contractions came faster. "You're doing wonderfully," Bawako Sarutobi encouraged. Her experienced hand steady despite the tension in the room. Just a little longer. Minato maintained the seal with unwavering focus, his legendary concentration fixed entirely on containing the Nine Tails. Yet even he could not help but notice how the characters of the seal glowed with an unusual iridescence, shimmering between crimson and lavender. "Something's different," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Kushina's eyes flew open, irises flecked with gold. "He's fighting harder than expected," she gasped through gritted teeth. "But there's something else. Something watching." Before Minato could question her meaning, a searing contraction tore through Kushina, and the process accelerated with startling speed. Outside the cave, Anbu guards reported later. The crimson auroras intensified directly overhead, seeming to spiral downward toward their location. "I can see the head," Bawako announced. "Push now, Kushina." With a final, tremendous effort, Kushina delivered her son into a world bathed in supernatural light. The newborn did not cry immediately. Instead, as Bawako lifted him, all present witnessed something unprecedented. The INFA. NT opened eyes that should have been newborn blue but instead revealed irises of pale lavender, flecked with concentric rings. "Impossible," whispered one of the attending medics. The moment shatter. As a figure materialized within the cave, a masked man who moved with inhuman speed. What followed was chaos. Bawako and the Anbu guards fell before anyone could react. The masked intruder seized the newborn Naruto. Kunai poised above the infant. "Step away from the Jinchuriki," the masked man ordered Minato, "or your son dies." Time seemed to slow as Minato calculated his options. But before he could act, something unprecedented occurred. The infant Naruto, only minutes old, became enveloped in a shimmering lavender aura. The masked man flinched, dropping the child as though burned. "What is this?" he hissed, staring at his blistered hand through the single eye-hole of his orange mask. The lavender chakra formed a perfect sphere around the infant as he floated gently to the ground. Minato, seizing the moment of confusion, flashed to his son, hands already forming seals to transport him to safety. But when his fingers touched the barrier, instead of resistance, he felt a warm recognition. The chakra admitted him while keeping the masked intruder at bay. "Impossible," the masked man murmured. "That chakra, it can't be." Minato didn't wait to discover what had startled his opponent. In an instant, he teleported Naruto to a prepared safe house. When he flashed back seconds later, the cave was empty except for Kushina, who had been forcibly extracted from the birthing bed. Outside, the sky had transformed from auroras to malevolence. The Nine Tails, now free, rose over Konoha, its 9 tails sweeping through buildings as its roar shattered windows for miles. But those with Dujutsu who witnessed the event would later report something strange. A faint lavender aura briefly surrounded the beast before dissipating, and its eyes, normally slitted with rage, airily displayed a pattern of concentric rings. The battle that followed would be recorded in Konoha's history as both tragedy and miracle. Minato and Kushina fought with everything they possessed to restrain the beast. The masked man, revealed to possess a Sharingan, controlled the 9 tails with unprecedented skill. Yet throughout the conflict, strange chakra phenomena manifested, lavender bar rears appearing spontaneously to protect civilians, gravity itself seeming to warp around the 9 tails at crucial moments. The end, when it came, differed significantly from what might have been. Minato prepared to sacrifice himself using the Reaper Death Seal, dividing the 9 tails between himself and his newborn son. The infant Naruto once again became enveloped in lavender light. The chakra expanded outward, forming tendrils that reached toward the rampaging Biju. Minato, look, Kushina gasped, her body failing but her eyes wide with astonishment. The 9 tails froze mid-attack, its massive form suddenly immobilized. Its eyes, blazing with hatred, fixed on the tiny infant with an expression almost like recognition, or fear. The lavender tendrils touched the beast's chakra, and where they connected, the malevolent energy transformed, becoming purified. That's not possible, Minato whispered, his hand still formed in the seal that would summon death itself. No one can purify Biju chakra. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The 9 tails struggled against an invisible force as its chakra was systematically drawn into the infant Naruto, not through a seal, but some innate process neither parent understood. Most striking of all, the infant's eyes had transformed again, the lavender irises now displaying a complex pattern, concentric rings surrounding 9 tomo. Rinne Sharingan, the masked man whispered from where he watched, hidden among the trees. Kaguya's power, in a newborn. He vanished into a spatial distortion, leaving behind only swirling leaves. Kushina, with the last of her strength, crawled to her son. Minato, he's changing the 9 tails somehow. The 4th Hokage stared in astonishment as the process continued. The some Biju's resistance weakened with each passing second until, with a final howl that seemed to contain more confusion than rage, the last of its chakra spiraled into the infant. Unlike a traditional Jinchuriki sealing, no visible seal appeared on Naruto's skin. Instead, his eyes slowly reverted to normal newborn blue, the strange patterns receding like a tide. Minato caught Kushina as she collapsed. Hold on, he pleaded, his own chakra dangerously depleted. We'll get help. She smiled weakly, touching their son's cheek. He's special, Minato, beyond anything we imagined. Her voice faltered. Promise me you'll protect him. Not just from others, but from whatever this power might mean. Before Minato could respond, Hiruzen and a team of Anbu arrived at the battlefield. The 3rd Hokage took in the scene with disbelief. The absence of the 9 tails, the dying Kushina, the exhausted Minato, and the peacefully sleeping infant surrounded by residual traces of lavender chakra. What happened here? Hiruzen demanded. Minato looked up, his expression a mixture of awe and terror. Something impossible, he answered. Naruto absorbed the 9 tails. Not through a seal, he just took it. Later that night, as medics fought to save both parents, Hiruzen stood over the infant Naruto in a secure room deep within the Hokage Tower. The child slept peacefully, showing no signs of the incredible power he had manifested hours before. Jiraiya, summoned urgently from his intelligence-gathering mission, examined the baby with specialized sensing techniques. I've never seen anything like this, the Sannin admitted. His chakra coils are unlike any I've encountered, more developed than an adult's, with a complexity I can't even map. The 9 tails is definitely contained within him, but not through any sealing technique I recognize. And the eyes? Hiruzen asked quietly. Jiraiya shook his head. Legends, mostly. The Rinne Sharingan is mentioned in the most ancient scrolls as the Dujutsu of the rabbit goddess herself. If that's what Minato saw. He trailed off, implications hanging heavy in the air. Could it be some manifestation of Kushina's Uzumaki Hari? Tage combined with Minato's unique chakra? No, Jiraiya said firmly. This is something else entirely. Something older. The infant Naruto stirred in his sleep, tiny fingers flexing. For just a moment, those watching thought they saw a flicker of lavender light trace patterns across his skin. Whatever this means, Hiruzen said gravely, it must remain secret. If word spreads about these abilities. Jiraiya nodded. Every village, every organization with interest in power would hunt him. Not to mention religious zealots who might see him as either messiah or abomination. Their conversation was interrupted by a medic rushing into the room, expression grave. Lord Hokage, we've done everything possible, but Lady Kushina's chakra system was too severely damaged. She has minutes at most. Lord Fourth is asking for his son. Quote, the scene in the hospital room would haunt Hiruzen for years to come. Kushina, her vibrant spirit fading visibly, cradled her son one last time. Minato, himself critically wounded, had dragged himself to his wife's bedside against medical advice. He has your face, Kushina whispered, tracing Naruto's cheek. But there's something else there too. Something ancient. We'll face it together, Minato promised, though the pallor of his skin betrayed the gravity of his own condition. Kushina shook her head slightly. Listen carefully, both of you, she said, including Hiruzen in her gaze. What I felt during the birth, it wasn't just the nine tails trying to escape. There was another presence, something watching through the veil between worlds. Something recognized Naruto as its own. Minato and Hiruzen exchanged alarmed glances. Whatever power he has, Kushina continued, her voice weakening, it chose him. Protect him from those who would use him. Teach him to use it wisely. Her eyes drifted closed. Love him enough to help him remain human despite what he might become. Her hand went limp, the vibrant red hair that had been her trademark dulling as her life faded. Minato, with tremendous effort, leaned forward to kiss her forehead one last time. Then, turning to Hiruzen, he made his final request. The village won't understand. They'll fear him, maybe hate him. I'm entrusting his protection to you, old friend. His breathing grew labored. My notes, in the sealed compartment in my office. Research I never completed on space-time manipulation. It might help you understand what he's capable of. Save your strength, Hiruzen urged. You can guide him yourself. Minato shook his head slightly. We both know better. His gaze dropped to his son. Naruto, find your own path. Your mother and I believe in you. With those words, the yellow flash of Konoha closed his eyes for the final time, his hand still resting protectively over his son. In the days that followed, as Konoha mourned and rebuilt, Hiruzen made the most difficult decision of his long career. The official story would be simple. The nine tails had been sealed into Naruto by the fourth Hokage at the cost of his life, using a conventional if powerful sealing technique. The truth about the strange chakra, the Rinne Sharingan, and the inexplicable absorption of the Biju would be classified as an S-rank secret known only to himself, Jiraiya, and a handful of trusted Anbu. It's for his protection, Hiruzen explained to his advisors when the why questioned the decision to raise the boy within the village rather than in isolation. And ours. We must observe his development carefully. What none of them could have predicted was how quickly that development would manifest. 3 years passed. Autumn leaves spiraled down around the Hokage as he watched a small blonde boy sitting alone in the playground. Unlike other children his age, Naruto Uzumaki rarely ran or shouted. Instead, he observed with unsettling intensity, those bright blue eyes tracking the movements of birds, clouds, and people with equal fascination. He doesn't behave like a normal 3-year-old, Homura commented, standing beside Hiruzen. Because he isn't one, the third replied softly. Watch his eyes. As if on cue, a ball rolled near Naruto. The child reached toward it. But before his fingers made contact, the ball rose slightly, hovering an inch above the ground. The boy's eyes flashed, just for an instant, with a lavender tint. He looked around quickly, checking if anyone had noticed, then pushed the ball with his hand instead, an almost calculating movement for one so young. That's the third manifestation this week, Hiruzen said. Small things, objects moving, plants growing too quickly around him, water in his cup freezing briefly. And the villagers, they sense something different about him. Combined with knowing he contains the nine tails. Hiruzen sighed. The isolation has already begun. No one allows their children to play with him. Later that afternoon, Hiruzen sat across from Naruto in his office. Despite his age, the boy sat with unnatural stillness, those bright blue eyes taking in everything. "Am I in trouble, old man?" Naruto asked, his voice carrying an oddly formal cadence for a child. Hiruzen smiled gently. "Not at all, I just wanted to talk to you." He placed a set of wooden blocks on the desk between them. "Would you like to play?" Naruto looked at the blocks, then back at the Hokage. "You saw what I did with the ball, didn't you? Direct, perceptive, nothing like the boisterous child he might have been in another life." "Yes," Hiruzen admitted, "and it's perfectly fine, Naruto. You're special. The villagers don't think special is good." The boy's fingers traced patterns on the desk, concentric circles that made Hiruzen's skin prickle. "They whisper when they think I can't hear. Monster, demon, freak." Each word was precise, as if catalogued and filed away. "They don't understand," Hiruzen said softly. "But I do, and I think it's time we started helping you understand it too." "The power inside me," Naruto stated rather than asked. "It talks to me sometimes, you know. Not with words, with feelings, pictures." Hiruzen managed to keep his expression neutral despite his alarm. "What sort of pictures?" "A woman with white hair and horns," Naruto said simply. "She shows me things. How to move objects without touching them. How to feel the energy in everything." He picked up a wooden block, and before Hiruzen's astonished eyes, it rose and floated above the boy's palm. "She feels familiar, like she's been waiting for me." The implications chilled Hiruzen to his core. Not just the 9 tails then. Something else. Something that aligned with the ancient legends. He made a decision. "Naruto, starting tomorrow, you'll begin special training. Not at the arcade. You're too young for that, but with tutors I'll select personally." He leaned forward. "But there are rules. Important ones." The boy nodded, eerily solemn. "These abilities you have must remain secret. Don't show them to anyone except your teachers and me. Some people wouldn't understand, and they might try to hurt you or use you. Because they're afraid," Naruto said with the simple clarity of a child stating an obvious fact. "Yes." Hiruzen was continually unsettled by the boy's perceptiveness. "The second rule is that you must learn control. Great power requires great responsibility. Like yours as Hokage," Naruto observed. "Exactly." Hiruzen managed a smile. "And third, remember that while these abilities make you different, they don't make you better than others. Every person in this village has value." Naruto considered this, then asked a question that revealed just how advanced his thinking already was. "If I keep my abilities secret, how will people ever see me as anything but the demon they think I am?" The question struck Hiruzen like a physical blow. "In time, Naruto. In time, you'll find those who see you for who you truly are." By age 5, Naruto lived a life of careful compartmentalization. To the village, he presented himself as a quiet, somewhat withdrawn child who lived in a specially prepared apartment under Anbu surveillance. He attended a civilian school, where he deliberately maintained average performance despite his accelerated intellect. But 3 evenings a week, he entered a secret training facility beneath the Hokage monument. There, with chakra-suppressing seals ensuring no sensor could detect their activities, Naruto worked with a rotating cadre of elite instructors. "Your chakra control is extraordinary," Kakashi Hatake observed as Naruto balanced perfectly on a single finger, maintained 3 separate water bubbles in the air around him. Each bubble contained a different small object, a kunai, a shuriken, and a senbon, each rotating at a different speed. "It's easier if I use her chakra," Naruto replied, his concentration unwavering. Kakashi exchanged glances with the third Hokage, who observed from the doorway. These casual references to her had become more frequent, though Naruto never elaborated beyond describing occasional visions and intuitive knowledge that seemed to come from elsewhere. "Try without it," Kakashi suggested. "Your own chakra needs strengthening too." Naruto nodded. The faint lavender glow surrounding the water bubbles faded, replaced by a more conventional blue chakra. The exercise became visibly more difficult. Sweat beaded on the boy's forehead as he struggled to maintain the complex manipulation. "Good," Kakashi encouraged. "Natural talent is valuable, but earned skill is more reliable." Later, As Naruto practiced calligraphy with chakra-infused ink, an exercise designed to improve his fine control, Hiruzen and Kakashi conferred in low voices. His progress is unprecedented, Kakashi admitted. He's already at genin level in chakra control and theoretical knowledge. His strategic thinking during simulations would challenge most Chunin. And the incidents? Hiruzen asked. Kakashi's visible eye grew serious. Less frequent but more significant when they occur. Last week, during emotional distress, he created what appeared to be a small dimensio. Null pocket. A rift that opened and closed in seconds. And his eyes. The Rinne Sharingan manifested. Briefly, when I used the Sharingan to observe his chakra flow during the event, I saw something disturbing. 2 distinct chakra signatures, the 9 tails, as expected, but also something else. Something that felt ancient. Hiruzen puffed thoughtfully on his pipe. Jiraiya's research into the Sage of Six Paths legend suggests a connection to what he's experiencing. The Rinne Sharingan was supposedly the original Dujutsu from which all others derived. A Kekkei Genkai that predates Kekkei Genkai, Kakashi murmured. But how could Minato and Kushina's child inherit such a thing? Perhaps he didn't inherit it at all, Hiruzen suggested quietly. Perhaps it chose him, as Kushina believed. Their conversation was interrupted by a small commotion in the training area. Naruto stood perfectly still, ink brush hanging forgotten in his hand as ink dripped onto the floor. His eyes had glazed over, staring at something no one else could see. Naruto. Kakashi approached cautiously. Can you hear me? The boy blinked slowly, eyes refocusing. I saw her again, he whispered. She showed me something. A place with white trees and endless sky. She called it home. At 6 years old, Naruto made his first friend. The encounter was as unlikely as it was consequential. Winter had settled over Konoha, bringing rare snow that transformed the village into a crystalline wonderland. Naruto, bundled in a blue scarf that an Anbu with purple hair had mysteriously left on his doorstep, walked through the quiet forest on the village outskirts. These solitary walks had become his refuge. Away from the whispers and cold stares, he could practice small manipulations of his abilities without observation. Snow crunched beneath his feet as he followed a frozen stream. With a subtle gesture, he caused the ice to crack in intricate patterns, forming designs like frost flowers across the surface. So absorbed was he in this private game that he didn't notice the presence of another until a small gasp broke the silence. Naruto spun, instantly dropping his chakra manipulation. Through the bare branches, he saw a small figure partially hidden behind a tree, a girl with dark blue hair and pale eyes, watching him with an expression of wonder rather than fear. How did you do that? She asked softly, stepping forward. Her lavender-white eyes marked her clearly as a Hyuga, one of Konoha's most prestigious clans. Naruto tensed, prepared for rejection. Do what? Make the ice dance, she said. Approaching the stream, it was beautiful. He studied her cautiously. You're not afraid. The girl tilted her head slightly. Should I be? Most people are. They say I'm dangerous. A small smile touched her lips. My father says I'm too gentle to be a proper Hyuga. Maybe I don't see danger the way others do. She extended a small hand, red from the cold. I'm Hinata, Naruto, he replied, taking her hand with uncharacteristic hesitation. The moment their fingers touched, something extraordinary happened. A jolt like static electricity passed between them, and Naruto felt a strange resonance in his chakra, as if something dormant briefly stirred. More startling was Hinata's reaction. Her Byakugan activated spontaneously, the veins around her eyes bulging as her Dujutsu engaged without conscious effort. Your chakra, she whispered, staring at him with those all-seeing eyes. It has colors I've never seen before. Naruto stepped back, alarmed. This had never happened before. No one had ever described his chakra that way. What do you mean, colors? Hinata blinked, her Byakugan deactivating as she rubbed her eyes in confusion. There was purple and gold. And something else. Something that looked like stars. She shook her head. That's never happened before. My Byakugan activating by itself. Naruto's mind raced. The third Ha-D warned him never to reveal his true nature, but this girl had somehow sensed it anyway. You should probably stay away from me, he said reluctantly. People who get close to me tend to get in trouble. Instead of retreating, Hinata stepped closer. Is that why you're alone all the time? I've seen you at the park, watching other children play. The observation struck uncomfortably close. I'm used to being alone. No one gets used to that, she said with surprising wisdom. Then, glancing at the ice patterns he'd created, could you show me how you did that? I promise I won't tell anyone. Against his better judgment, Naruto felt himself wanting to trust this strange, gentle girl. Just a little, he conceded, turning back to the stream. With careful concentration, he extended his hand. Rather than using the lavender chakra that came so easily, he channeled his own blue energy, causing a small section of ice to crack in a spiral pattern. It required more effort this way, but felt safer. Hinata watched, entranced. It's like you're talking to the water, she murmured. Then, to his surprise, she knelt beside the stream and placed her own small hand on the ice. Chakra flowed from her fingers, not manipulating the ice as he had, but somehow harmonizing with it, causing the crystals to refract light in rainbow patterns. How did you do that? Naruto asked, genuinely impressed. Gentle Fist isn't just for fighting, she explained. It's about seeing and connecting with the chakra in all things. She looked up at him with curiosity. Your technique feels similar, but different too. For the next hour, they experimented together by the frozen stream, Naruto creating patterns in the ice, Hinata enhancing them with her own chakra. Neither child recognized the significance of what was happening. Two ancient chakra lineages, Otsutsuki and Hyuga, resonating and amplifying each other for the first time in centuries. When the winter sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, Hinata reluctantly stood. I have to go back. Father will worry. Naruto nodded, suddenly aware of how much time had passed, and how much he had enjoyed it. Will you get in trouble for being with me? Hinata considered this with surprising seriousness for a child her age. Perhaps, but some things are worth trouble. With formal politeness that contrasted with her age, she bowed slightly. Thank you for showing me your ice patterns, Naruto. As she turned to leave, Naruto called after her, will you come back? Sometime. The smile she gave him then, shy bu. Genuinely warm, was unlike any expression he had ever received from a villager. Tomorrow, same time. After she disappeared among the trees, Naruto remained by the stream, staring at the patterns they had created together. For the first time in his memory, the constant awareness of being different, of being feared, had receded into the background. In its place was something unfamiliar but pleasant, connection. That night, in his dreams, he saw the white-haired woman again. She stood in a realm of floating islands and impossible gravity, watching him with eyes that held both stars and ripples. She has the diluted blood of our clan, the woman said, her voice echoing as if across vast distances. The eyes are a shadow of what they once were, but there is potential. When Naruto woke the next morning, frost patterns identical to those he and Hinata had created covered his window, from the inside. The friendship between Naruto and Hinata developed in secret over the following months. They met in their clearing by the stream, sharing techniques and stories. For Naruto, these meetings became treasured moments of normalcy. For Hinata, they were opportunities to practice her abilities without the critical eyes of her clan. What neither child realized was that they were under observation. Hiruzen had assigned Anbu to monitor all of Naruto's interactions, and the reports of his meetings with the Hyuga heiress caused considerable concern among his advisors. The Hyuga will not approve of this connection, Kaharu warned during a private council meeting. Especially given their ambitions for their heiress. More concerning is the chakra resonance the Anbu reported, Hiruzen replied. When they practice together, there are measurable changes in the surrounding environment, accelerated plant growth, unusual weather patterns, wildlife behaving abnormally. Could the Byakugan somehow be activating dormant aspects of his abilities? Homura suggested. Hiruzen puffed thoughtfully on his pipe. Perhaps. Or perhaps this is simply the natural affinity between two chakra types with a common ancestor. The decision they reached was pragmatic. Allow the friendship to continue under careful observation. If the Hyuga discovered and objected, they would respect the clan's wishes. Until then, the benefits to Naruto's social development outweighed the potential risks. What they couldn't have anticipated was how quickly those risks would materialize. Spring had come to Konoha, transforming the landscape. The stream where Naruto and Hinata met now flowed freely, bordered by wildflowers that seemed particularly vibrant in their clearing. They sat together on a fallen log, Hinata carefully showing Naruto how to fold an origami crane. My mother taught me this before she died, Hinata explained, her fingers deftly creasing the paper. She said cranes represent good fortune and longevity. Naruto watched intently, trying to mimic her movements with his own sheet of paper. Despite his advanced chakra control, such delicate tasks still challenged him. My fingers are too clumsy, he complained. It takes practice, Hinata encouraged. Try again. As Naruto focused on the paper, concentration furrowing his brow, he failed to notice the approach of 3 older boys until their shadows fell across the clearing. Academy students, based on their age, perhaps 10 or 11 years old. Well, look at this, the largest boy sneered. The demon brat has a girlfriend. Naruto froze, the paper crane forgotten in his hands. Beside him, Hinata tensed but didn't speak. Isn't that the Hyuga princess? Another boy asked. What's she doing with him? Maybe she doesn't know what he is, the third suggested with malicious glee. Should we tell her? Naruto stood slowly, positioning himself between Hinata and the boys. Leave her alone, he said quietly. Your problem is with me. The leader laughed. You got that right, freak. My uncle died when the Nine Tails attacked. Dad says you're the demon reborn, and the Hokage's too soft to put you down. That's not true, Hinata said suddenly, standing beside Naruto. Naruto isn't a demon, he's my friend. Shows what you know. The boy scoffed, stepping forward. The Hyuga are supposed to be so smart, but you're hanging out with the village monster. What happened next occurred too quickly for anyone to prevent. The leader shoved Naruto hard, sending him stumbling backward into the stream. As the cold water soaked through his clothes, something inside Naruto shifted, a barrier between consciousness and power momentarily weakening. His eyes flashed, the blue irises bleeding into lavender with concentric rings. The water around him froze instantly, not into normal ice but into crystalline structures that grew upward like reaching hands. The ground trembled slightly, and the air grew heavy with pressure that made it difficult to breathe. The bullies stumbled back in terror. His eyes. One gasped. What's wrong with his eyes? Hinata, rather than retreating, stepped into the stream beside Naruto. Without hesitation, she took his hand. Naruto, she said softly, it's okay. I'm here. The physical contact created an immediate reaction. Naruto's chakra, violently fluctuating with lavender energy, seemed to harmonize with Hinata's. The ice structures stopped growing, their edges softening. His eyes gradually returned to normal as he focused on her face. I'm sorry, he whispered, shame washing over him. I didn't mean to. Before Hinata could respond, new presences entered the clearing. 2 Hyuga branch members, their Byakugan active and expression severe. Lady Hinata, one said formally, your father has been looking for you. You've missed your training session. Their eyes took in the scene, the terrified academy students, the unnatural ice formations, and Naruto's hand still clasped in Hinata's. The second Hyuga moved forward, physically separating the children. Lord Hiashi will hear of this, he said coldly, looking at Naruto with undisguised suspicion. As they led Hinata away, she looked back over her shoulder. Tomorrow, she mouthed silently, a promise in her eyes despite the trouble that clearly awaited her. But tomorrow came and went, and Hinata didn't appear at their meeting place. Nor the day after, or the one following. By the 4th day, Naruto understood. The Hyuga had forbidden their heiress from associating with the village Jinchuriki. When Hiruzen visited Naruto that evening, he found the boy sitting cross-legged on his apartment floor, surrounded by dozens of clumsily folded paper cranes. She taught me how to make these, Naruto said without looking up. I'm not very good at it yet. Hiruzen sat heavily in the chair across from him. The Hyuga clan has concerns about your friendship with Hinata. Because of what I am, Naruto stated flatly. Because of what they fear you might be, Hiruzen corrected gently. Fear often drives people to make decisions they later regret. The ice wasn't going to hurt anyone, Naruto said, folding another crooked crane. I was just scared for a moment. I know. Hiruzen watched the boy's methodical movements. Naruto, There's something we need to discuss. Your training needs to intensify. What happened at the stream shows that your abilities are developing faster than anticipated. Naruto finally looked up, those blue eyes unnervingly direct. She wasn't afraid of me. Even when my eyes changed. She just understood. The observation gave Hiruzen pause. There was something significant in that statement, something that might prove crucial to Naruto's development. After a moment's consideration, he made a decision that went against all conventional wisdom but felt inexplicably right. The Hyuga have requested that Hinata focus on her clan training for now, he said carefully. But perhaps, once a week, she could participate in certain aspects of your special training. As a Byakugan user, she offers unique perspectives that might be beneficial. The transformation in Naruto's expression was immediate, hope replacing resignation. Really, you could arrange that. Quote, I am still the Hokage, Hiruzen said with a small smile. Some persuasion may be required, but I believe I can convince Hiashi of the mutual benefits. What he didn't share with Naruto was his growing theory, that the Hyuga's ocular abilities might help the boy better understand and control the dujutsu that occasionally manifested in moments of stress. More importantly, Hinata's natural empathy seemed to stabilize Naruto's more volatile chakra in ways that warranted further study. By his 7th birthday, Naruto had developed a training regime, more intensive than most jonin maintained. Mornings began before dawn with meditation techniques taught by an Anbu with wood release abilities. These sessions focused on harmonizing his natural chakra with the more volatile energies that occasionally surfaced. Afternoons were dedicated to academic studies far beyond the standard academy curriculum. Advanced chakra theory, history focused particularly on the Sage of Six Paths era, and strategic thinking exercises designed by Shikaku Nara himself. Evenings alternated between physical training with various specialists and what Naruto privately called his weird powers practice, careful, controlled experimentation with the abilities that spontaneously manifested. Once weekly, Hinata joined these sessions under the guise of Dujutsu exchange training, an arrangement Hiashi Hyuga had reluctantly accepted after considerable diplomatic pressure from the Hokage. These sessions proved remarkably productive. Hinata's Byakugan could act Naruto's chakra flow in ways that helped him understand his own abilities better. Your chakra pathways are unlike anything I've ever seen, Hinata observed during one such session. They sat facing each other in the underground training facility, her Byakugan active as Naruto performed a complex chakra manipulation exercise. Different how? He asked, maintaining his concentration on the FIV. Small objects hovering above his palm, each suspended in its own miniature gravitational field. Most people have a single chakra system, with pathways of consistent size and flow, she explained. Her confidence growing whenever she discussed what her eyes could see. You have layers. Your primary system resembles a normal human's, but beneath it is another network entirely, larger channels, different flow patterns. The Nine Tails chakra, Naruto suggested. Hinata shook her head slightly. No, that's a third layer, red and volatile. This second system is lavender and gold, with structures I've never seen in any anatomical text. She leaned closer, her expression fascinated rather than repulsed. When you channel chakra for these exercises, the three systems interact in patterns that shouldn't be possible. From his observation position, Kakashi raised an eyebrow. The Hyuga girl was describing something beyond standard Biju host chakra integration, something that allied Ned with their growing suspicions about Naruto's true nature. Can you draw what you see? Kakashi suggested, offering a scroll and ink. For the next hour, Hinata created detailed diagrams of Naruto's chakra system as he performed various techniques. The resulting images confirmed what Jiraiya's research had begun to suggest. Naruto's body contained chakra pathways that resembled ancient descriptions of the Sage of Six Paths and, more disturbingly, the legendary Kaguya Otsutsuki herself. These structures here, Kakashi pointed to spiral formations near Naruto's eyes, correspond to Dujutsu chakra reservoirs. But they're more complex than those in Uchiha or Hyuga anatomy. Because they support multiple eye techniques? Naruto asked, studying the diagrams with intense interest. Kakashi nodded. Potentially. The Rinne Sharingan you've manifested briefly combines aspects of several known dujutsu. Could I learn to use the Byakugan too? Naruto asked, glancing at Hinata. The question hung in the air, its implications staggering. If Naruto could access multiple Kekkei Genkai at will. One thing at a time, Kakashi said carefully. For now, let's focus on controlling what already manifests naturally. Later, as Hinata prepared to leave, escorted as always by a Hyuga branch member waiting discreetly outside, she paused beside Naruto. Tomorrow is your birthday, she said softly. Will you celebrate? Naruto shrugged. The old man usually brings ramen. Nothing special. Hinata hesitated, then pressed something into his hand, a small package wrapped in lavender paper. Don't open it until tomorrow, she whispered, and don't tell anyone it's from me. After she left, Naruto stared at the package, turning it over in his hands. No one except the Hokage had ever given him a birthday gift before. The next morning, alone in his apartment, Naruto carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a hand-knitted blue scarf and a note in elegant handwriting. For when we can't walk by the stream together. Happy birthday, Naruto. Your friend always, H. Asterisk. Something warm and unfamiliar expanded in Naruto's chest. Friendship, still a novel concept, felt suddenly more real, more tangible. He wrapped the scarf around his neck, the soft material carrying a faint scent of lavender and sunshine. That afternoon, during his birthday visit, Hiruzen noticed the scarf immediately. A nice addition to your wardrobe, he commented casually. Naruto touched the fabric, a small smile playing at his lips. A friend gave it to me. The Hokage nodded, understanding the significance of those simple words. Friends are a rare treasure, Naruto. They see us for who we truly are, not what others fear we might be. Is that why you arranged for Hinata to train with me? Naruto asked directly. Because she sees me differently. Hiruzen considered his answer carefully. Partly, but also because what she sees with those eyes of hers helps us understand what's happening with your chakra. He met the boy's gaze directly. And because everyone, even someone with extraordinary abilities, needs human connection to remain grounded. Naruto's expression grew serious. The voice. The woman I sometimes see in dreams, she doesn't understand that. She talks about power and destiny, but never about people. The admission sent a chill down Hiruzen's spine. These dream communications had become more frequent over the past year. What does she tell you about destiny, Naruto? That I'm meant for something important. That these eyes I sometimes get are her gift to me. He hesitated. She calls me her descendant, but not in the normal way. More like her continuation. Hiruzen maintained a neutral expression despite his growing alarm. And how do those conversations make you feel? Naruto considered this with the unusual thoughtfulness that characterized him. Confused. Part of me feels drawn to her, like she understands aspects of me that no one else can. But another part feels warned. He touched his stomach, where the nine tails resided. The fox hates her. When she appears, it rages against its confinement more violently. The nine tails speaks to you as well? Hiruzen asked carefully. Not with words, like she does. More with feelings. Anger, mostly, but also fear, when she's present. This information aligned with Jiraiya's latest research findings. Ancient texts suggesting a complex relationship between the Biju and their progenitor, Kaguya. If the nine tails recognized her chakra within Naruto and reacted with fear rather than just hatred. Naruto. Hiruzen said gently, I want you to promise me something. When she speaks to you, listen but question. Consider her words carefully rather than accepting them as truth. And always tell me or your teachers about these conversations. The boy nodded solemnly. I know she wants something from me. Something important. All the more reason for caution. Hiruzen smiled then, deliberately shifting to a lighter topic. Now, I believe I promised you ramen for your birthday. Shall we? As they walked through the village toward Ichiraku's, Hiruzen noticed something that gave him hope. While many villagers still regarded Naruto with suspicion or outright hostility, the boy himself had developed a remarkable resilience. He walked with quiet confidence, his back straight, his gaze steady. Not the loud, attention-seeking behavior that might have developed from such isolation, but something more profound, self-possession beyond his years. Old man, Naruto sighed. Suddenly as they neared the ramen stand, when will I join the academy? Hiruzen had been expecting this question. Next year, perhaps. Your training has progressed exceptionally well, but there are still concerns about control in stressful situations. Because of what happened with the bullies and the ice. Partly, Hiruzen acknowledged, but also because the academy environment would restrict what you can learn. The standard curriculum would be limiting for someone with your particular abilities. Naruto absorbed this with surprising equanimity. But I need to become a genin eventually. To be acknowledged by the village. The simple statement carried volumes of meaning. Despite his advanced abilities and specialized training, what Naruto craved most was something entirely human, acceptance. In time, Hiruzen promised. For now, focus on mastering what makes you unique. The path before you may not follow traditional steps, but it leads to the same destination. As they entered Ichiraku's, greeted warmly by Chuki and Ayame who had always treated Naruto with kindness, Hiruzen found himself reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the boy beside him. Born with powers that defied comprehension, carrying burdens no child should bear, yet still fundamentally a child seeking connection and purpose. The scarf around Naruto's neck, a simple gift from his first true friend, seemed to symbolize something profoundly important, that despite the godlike powers that occasionally manifested, despite the ancient entity that spoke through his dreams, Naruto Uzumaki remained human at his core. That humanity, Hiruzen believed, might ultimately be more important than all the divine chakra he possessed. For in the battle between power and connection that seemed to be brewing within the boy, the victory of his human heart might well determine the fate of them all. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Awakening Eyes. Frost etched intricate patterns across the windows of the Hokage Tower, creating a crystalline filter through which the winter sun cast prismatic light across the meeting chamber. 5 figures sat in tense silence around the circular table, Hiruzen Sarutobi at its head. Flanked by his advisors Homura and Kaharu, with Iruka Yumino and Kakashi Hatake completing the gathering. On the table between them lay a thin folder bearing a simple label, Uzumaki, Naruto, Academy Advancement Proposal. You understand what you're suggesting is unprecedented, Kaharu said, her weathered fingers tapping the folder's edge. No student has ever bypassed the standard academy curriculum entirely. His circumstances are equally unprecedented, Kakashi countered, his visible eye fixed on the third Hokage rather than the elderly advisor. After 2 years of specialized training, Naruto has mastered skills that would challenge most Chunin. The academy would only restrict his development at this point. Iruka shifted uncomfortably. I don't disagree with his capabilities. But there are concerns beyond the technical. The purpose of the academy isn't solely skill development, it's about teamwork, village integration, forming bonds with one's peer group. Precisely my concern, Homura interjected. The boy already stands apart. Accelerating him further may only deepen that isolation. Hiruzen had remained silent throughout this exchange, fingers steepled before him as he absorbed their arguments. Now, he lowered his hands and addressed Iruka directly. You've observed his monthly evaluations. In your professional assessment, how would Naruto function in a standard academy classroom? Iruka considered carefully before answering. Academically, he would be unchallenged to the point of boredom. Socially, he hesitated. The other students already hear rumors from their parents. Placing him among them without the skills to properly control his unique abilities could lead to incidents or opportunities for normal childhood interactions, Kaharu countered. Kakashi shook his head. Naruto's childhood ceased being normal the moment he was born. We do him no favors pretending otherwise. The third Hokage finally opened the folder, revealing a detailed training schedule and evaluation metrics compiled over the past 2 years. His weathered fingers traced the growth charts, chakra capacity measurements that literally went off the standard scales. Cognitive assessments showing problem-solving abilities years beyond his chronological age, and psychological evaluations noting his unusual self-possession and analytical tendencies. What does Naruto himself want? Hiruzen asked, looking up from the documents. To be acknowledged as a shinobi of the leaf, Kakashi answered promptly. To follow in his father's footsteps, though he doesn't know they're his father's. And to protect those precious to him, Iruka added softly. Particularly the Hyuga girl. Hiruzen nodded slowly. Their friendship continues to develop, I understand. Their weekly training sessions have evolved into something quite remarkable, Kakashi confirmed. Her Byakugan helps him visualize chakra pathways he couldn't otherwise perceive, while his Uni-K chakra seems to enhance her visual acuity beyond standard Hyuga capabilities. This information caused both elders to exchange concerned glances. Hiyashi Hyuga is aware of this effect. Kaharu asked sharply. He's been informed of certain aspects, Hiruzen replied diplomatically. Not all. A heavy silence fell as the implications settled over the group. The potential of combining Naruto's godlike chakra with established Kekkei Genkei was a development with staggering possibilities and risks. I've made my decision, Hiruzen said finally. Naruto will bypass the standard academy track and undergo direct evaluation for genin status. He raised a hand to forestall the elders' objections. However, he will not be placed on a standard 3-person team. Instead, I propose a specialized D unit under Kakashi's direct supervision, one with carefully selected teammates who can both benefit from and stabilize Naruto's unique capabilities. You have candidates in mind? Iruka asked. Sasuke Uchiha, for one, Hiruzen said, watching Kakashi carefully for his reaction. The copy ninja's visible eye widened slightly. A bold choice. The last Uchiha and Konoha's most unusual Jinchuriki on the same team. Their abilities may complement each other, Hiruzen explained. And both carry burdens that set them apart from their peers. Perhaps they might understand each other in ways others cannot. And the third member, Kaharu pressed. Hiruzen closed the folder deliberately. I'm still considering options. We need someone with exceptional chakra control and analytical abilities. Someone who won't be overwhelmed by the unique dynamics such a team will inevitably develop. As the meeting concluded, Kakashi lingered behind at the Hokage's subtle signal. When they were alone, Hiruzen's formal demeanor softened slightly. How is he really, Kakashi? Not the statistics and skills, but the boy himself. Kakashi considered the question with uncharacteristic seriousness. Balanced, for now. The more control he gains over his abilities, the more his natural personality emerges. He's quieter than Kushina was, more strategically minded than Minato, but there are flashes of both in him. He paused. There are also moments when something else entirely speaks through his actions, something ancient and calculating that evaluates rather than experiences. And the dreams, the communications with the entity he perceives as female. Less frequent since we implemented the specialized meditation techniques, but deeper when they occur. He described the last one as a conversat ion across time, where she showed him how to perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously. Kakashi's expression grew troubled. The concerning part is that he successfully replicated the technique afterward. Hiruzen absorbed this information with a gravity that showed his deep concern. We are navigating uncharted waters, Kakashi. None of the previous Jinchuriki manifested powers beyond their Biju's capabilities. What Naruto displays goes beyond even the legendary Dujutsu of the Sage of Six Paths. You're thinking of Kaguya directly, Kakashi stated rather than asked. Jiraiya's research increasingly points in that direction. The ancient texts describe her as a celestial being who consumed the chakra fruit and became something beyond human, the progenitor of all chakra users. Hiruzen sighed heavily. If Naruto somehow carries her legacy more directly than through the standard bloodline dilution, then we're dealing with powers no modern shinobi has encountered, Kakashi finished. All the more reason for specialized training rather than the academy. Yes, Hiruzen agreed, but also all the more reason to ensure he develops human connections strong enough to anchor him to this world and its values. He fixed Kakashi with an intent gaze. That will be your primary mission as his Jonin sensei, Kakashi. Not to develop his technical skills, those seem to be emerging less of our intervention, but to guide his heart. As Minato would have wanted, Kakashi said softly. As the world needs, Hiruzen corrected. For if the legends are true, and Kaguya ultimately sought to reclaim all chakra for herself, we must ensure Naruto never walks a similar path. 3 days later, 8-year-old Naruto Uzumaki stood in the Hokage's office, dressed in standard navy shinobi attire that made his blonde hair and blue eyes stand out even more starkly. Despite his youth, he carried himself with unusual stillness, his gaze steady as Hiruzen explained the unprecedented decision. You understand that this advancement comes with unique expectations, the Hokage concluded. Your skills have surpassed the academy level, but becoming a genin involves responsibilities beyond technical proficiency. I understand, Naruto replied, his voice carrying the peculiar formality that had characterized him since early childhood. I won't disappoint you, Lord Hokage. Hiruzen studied the boy carefully. Naruto had grown tall for his age, lean rather than stocky, with features that increasingly reflected Minato rather than Kushina. But it was his demeanor that most distinguished him from other children, the measured responses, the analytical gaze, the careful self-control that made his occasional moments of childlike enthusiasm all the more striking by contrast. This isn't about disappointing me, Naruto, Hiruzen said gently. This is about providing you the structure that best serves both your development and the village's welfare. He removed a Hittite from his desk drawer. This belongs to you now. Wear it with pride and responsibility. Naruto accepted the forehead protector with reverence, running his fingers over the Konoha symbol. For a brief moment, pure childlike joy broke through his composed exterior, a glimpse of what might have been his natural temperament under different circumstances. Thank you, he said, genuine emotion making his voice slightly less formal. I've waited for this moment for a long time. You'll meet your Jonin-sensei tomorrow at Training Ground 3. He will explain the composition of your team and your initial assignments. Hiruzen smiled slightly. I believe you already know him quite well. Naruto's eyes lit with understanding. Kakashi-sensei. Hiruzen nodded. He specifically requested to oversee your genin development. As Naruto carefully tied the Hittite around his forehead, Hiruzen observed how the metal caught the light, momentarily reflecting back with an unusual purple tinge, a subtle reminder of the extraordinary chakra that flowed through the boy's system. Naruto, Hiruzen said as the boy prepared to leave, there is something else we should discuss. Your teammates will not be aware of your special training or unique abilities. For now, that information remains classified. A shadow of concern crossed Naruto's face. You want me to hide my true capabilities from my own team? Not hide, Hiruzen corrected. Simply exercise discretion about the full extent of what you can do. Build trust gradually. Let them come to know you as a person before they confront the more unusual aspects of your abilities. Naruto considered this, his expression suddenly older than his years. You're worried they'll fear me if they know everything at once. The insightful comment struck Hiruzen forcefully. Yes, he admitted, people fear what they don't understand, and even shinobi are not immune to that human tendency. Like the villagers, Naruto observed without bitterness, rely stating a fact he had long since accepted. Some perceptions take time to change, Hiruzen said gently. But they do change, Naruto. Through shared experiences, through demonstrated character, through earned trust. Naruto nodded, accepting the wisdom. As he turned to leave, he paused at the door. Lord Hokage, will I still continue my special training with Hinata? The question carried weight beyond its simple words. Naruto's most significant personal connection lay in those weekly sessions. Of course, Hiruzen confirmed. Some aspects of your development still require specialized attention. Speaking of which, has there been any recurrence of the communications? Naruto's expression closed slightly. 2 nights ago, brief but intense, she showed me a technique for viewing chakra networks without a dojutsu. His voice dropped. She called it, remembering what was once mine. I'm not sure what she meant. Hiruzen maintained a neutral expression despite his internal alarm. And the 9 tails, any contact there? Quote, just the usual background awareness. Anger, mostly. Impatience. Naruto touched his stomach absently. It knows something is coming. Something important. Whatever comes, Hiruzen said firmly. Remember who you are, Naruto. Not what resides within you or what abilities you possess, but the choices you make. Those define you more than any power ever could. The boy bowed respectfully and departed, leaving Hiruzen alone with his thoughts, and his growing concern about what Naruto's unprecedented graduation might set in motion. Dawn broke clear and cold over Training Ground 3 as Naruto arrived precisely at the appointed time. The frost-covered field lay empty, unsurprising given Kakashi's notorious tardiness. Taking advantage of the solitude, Naruto settled into a cross-legged position, closed his eyes, and began the specialized meditation techniques he had learned from the wood release Anbu. Breath by measured breath, he extended his chakra awareness outward. identifying the unique signatures of nearby life. Birds in the surrounding trees, small mammals burrowing beneath the soil, insects dormant in winter hibernation. This exercise, designed to help him differentiate between his own chakra networks and external energy sources, had become a daily discipline. He had maintained this state for nearly 20 minutes when his NSES detected an approaching chakra signature, controlled, precise, and distinctly cold in its emotional resonance. Without opening his eyes, Naruto identified the newcomer, Sasuke Uchiha. The last Reviving member of the Uchiha clan paused at the edge of the clearing, observing Naruto with undisguised wariness. Though they had never interacted directly, Sasuke would certainly know the younger boy. By reputation, the mysterious orphan who had somehow bypassed the academy entirely. "You're early," Sasuke finally said, his voice deliberately neutral. Naruto opened his eyes, taking in the dark red boy dressed in the high-collared blue shirt bearing the Uchiha crest. "So are you," he replied, rising smoothly to his feet. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them, two boys marked by tragedy and isolation. Each carrying burdens invisible to most of their peers. "They say you never attended the academy," Sasuke finally remarked, a question disguised as a statement. "Special circumstances," Naruto answered simply, offering neither defensiveness nor elaboration. Sasuke's eyes narrowed slightly. "No one gets special circumstances in the shinobi world. Everyone gets special circumstances," Naruto countered, his voice carrying unexpected insight. "Yours came with the Uchiha name and all it entails. Mine came with being an orphan with certain complications." The reference to their respective situations, deliberately vague yet acknowledging the unusual nature of both, caught Sasuke off guard. Before he could respond, a swirl of leaves announced their sensei's arrival. "Ah, I see you two have started getting acquainted," Kakashi observed, his visible eye curving in what might have been a smile beneath his mask. "Good morning. You're late," Sasuke stated flatly. "Actually, I'm exactly on time for my scheduled arrival," Kakashi replied cheerfully, producing a small clock from his pocket that indeed showed the appointed hour. "You both chose to arrive early." Naruto suppressed a small smile. Kakashi's deliberate unpredictability was a teaching strategy he had experienced during their previous training, keeping students slightly off balance to test adaptability. "We appear to be missing a team member," Naruto observed, noting that they remained a threesome rather than the standard four-person squad. "Perceptive as always," Kakashi acknowledged with a nod. "Your third teammate is being selected with particular care. Until then, we'll function as a three-man cell." He gestured for them to gather closer. "Now, typically I would begin with some sort of test to evaluate your readiness to serve as genin, but given the unique composition of this team, we'll approach things differently." Sasuke frowned slightly. "Unique how?" Kakashi leaned against a training post. "You, Sasuke, graduated at the top of your academy class with exceptional scores across all standard metrics. Naruto has undergone specialized training outside the conventional system. Both of you have capabilities that exceed normal genin parameters. As such, we'll be handling missions and training differently than standard teams. So we're some kind of experimental squad," Sasuke concluded, his tone making clear his displeasure with the arrangement. "Think of it more as a specialized unit," Kakashi suggested. "The village occasionally forms teams around specific skill sets or potential. Yours is one such team." Quote. Naruto remained silent, observing the subtle currents of tension in Sasuke's posture. The Uchiha clearly resented being placed in what he perceived as an irregular arrangement. Perhaps viewing it as another way in which normal development had been denied him. "Before we proceed further," Kakashi continued, "I'd like each of you to share your capabilities and goals. Sasuke, you start." The dark-haired boy straightened slightly. "I am proficient in fire release techniques, above-average taijutsu, and shuriken jutsu. My goal," his voice hardened perceptibly, "my goal is to restore my clan and kill a certain man." Kakashi nodded without comment, turning to Naruto. "Your turn." Naruto considered carefully, mindful of the Hokage's guidance about discretion. "I have extensive chakra reserves and control, proficiency in shadow clones, and specialized sensory abilities. My goal is to earn recognition as a shinobi of the leaf and protect those precious to me." The deliberate vagueness of his self-assessment wasn't lost on Sasuke, whose eyes narrowed slightly in suspicion. Kakashi, however, moved the conversation forward smoothly. Excellent. Now that introductions are complete, let's discuss our first mission. Normally, new Genin teams begin with D-rank assignments, essentially community service to build teamwork. However, given your advanced capabilities, we'll be starting with a C-rank courier mission to the border outpost near the Land of Rivers. Both boys straightened with interest. A C-rank mission for their first assignment was unprecedented. We leave tomorrow at dawn, Kakashi continued. Pack for 5 days travel. Standard equipment plus cold weather gear. Questions. What are we couriering? Sasuke asked. Intellig. ENS reports and specialized equipment for the border guards, Kakashi replied. Nothing extraordinary, but important enough to require shinobi escort rather than conventional messengers. As they discussed logistics for the mission, Naruto found his attention drawn repeatedly to Sasuke. The Uchiha survivor carried himself with a brittle pride that barely concealed deeper wounds, something Naruto recognized from his own experiences with isolation. Unlike his own measured response to rejection, however, Sasuke had channeled his pain into focused ambition and carefully cultivated superiority. The briefing concluded and Sasuke departed with a curt nod. Naruto remained behind with Kakashi. You have concerns, Kakashi observed, correctly reading his student's expression. He doesn't trust me, Naruto stated simply. He senses I'm hiding something significant. Perceptive of him, Kakashi acknowledged. The question is, how will you handle that distrust? Naruto considered this thoughtfully. Not with revelations. Not yet. His blue eyes met Kakashi's single visible one directly. With demonstrated reliability. Actions rather than explanations. A smile crinkled the visible portion of Kakashi's face. You continue to surprise me, Naruto. Most children your age would either withdraw from rejection or attempt to force acceptance through dramatic displays. I'm not most children, Naruto replied without pride or bitterness, simply stating a fact they both acknowledged. No, Kakashi agreed, his expression growing more serious, which is precisely why this team composition intrigues me. You and Sasuke are mirrors of different possibilities, both exceptional, both isolated, but handling that isolation in fundamentally different ways. You're hoping we'll balance each other, Naruto concluded. I'm hoping you'll challenge each other, Kakashi corrected. Now, go prepare for tomorrow. And Naruto. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The Hokage advised discretion, but remember that true teams are built on trust. Eventually, Sasuke will need to know what he's really working with. Naruto nodded, understanding the complex balance he would need to maintain. As he turned to leave, Kakashi added one final thought. Oh, and you might want to wear that scarf the Hyuga girl made you. The northern border gets particularly cold this time of year. The mission began unremarkably. They departed Konoha at dawn as planned, traveling at a steady pace through the forests surrounding the village. The courier package, sealed scrolls and equipment in a ally protected case, remained secured to Kakashi's back as they moved in standard formation. By mid-morning, it became apparent that Sasuke was continually testing Naruto, subtly increasing his speed. Or suggesting more challenging routes to gauge the younger boy's capabilities. Naruto recognized the behavior for what it was, assessment rather than competition, and responded with consistent competence without revealing his true extent. They made camp that evening in a small clearing beside a frozen stream. As Sasuke gathered firewood, Naruto established the perimeter with sensory techniques disguised as standard traps. You're being evaluated, you know, Kakashi remarked quietly, kneeling beside Naruto as he set up a particularly complex chakra detection barrier. I'm aware, Naruto replied, his fingers weaving signs that appeared to be for a standard alarm technique but actually created a dimensional pocket that would alert him to any intrusion. He needs to establish a hierarchy. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Most children would find that offensive. Naruto shrugged slightly. It's logical. He doesn't know where I fit in his understanding of strength and ability. Until he does, he can't determine how to relate to me. He completed the technique with a subtle pulse of chakra that rippled outward invisibly. Besides, I've experienced worse assessments from the villagers. The simple statement, delivered without self-pity, reminded Kakashi of just how unusual Naruto's perspective had become. Years of isolation had given him an almost anthropological view of human behavior. Analyzing rather than reacting emotionally to others' treatment of him. Just remember, Kakashi advised, teams function best when assessment eventually gives way to trust. When Sasuke returned with an armload of firewood, he found Naruto preparing a simple but efficient camp layout. They worked in relative silence, each completing their tasks with professional focus. After a brief meal of field rations, Kakashi outlined the watch schedule and retired to his bedroll with his ever-present orange book, leaving the two boys sitting awkwardly by the fire. "You didn't learn those techniques at the academy," Sasuke finally stated. Watching as Naruto manipulated the campfire with subtle chakra to produce more heat with less smoke. "No," Naruto agreed without elaboration. Sasuke's frustration became visible in the slight tightening of his jaw. "Where did you train before this team was formed?" Naruto considered his response carefully. "With specialists assigned by the Hokage. My situation required customized approaches." Quote, "Because of the 9 tails," Sasuke stated bluntly. The direct reference to his Jinchuriki status momentarily surprised Naruto. He had assumed the younger generation remained unaware of his burden. Given the third's law prohibiting discussion of it. Reading his expression, Sasuke continued, "I'm not stupid, Naruto. The whisper networks in the Uchiha compound were extensive. I know what happened 8 years ago, and I know what you contain." Naruto studied the Uchiha air thoughtfully. This conversation represented a critical juncture. His response would establish the foundation of their working relationship. "Yes," he acknowledged finally. "That's part of it. The 9 tails requires specialized containment techniques. And the rest?" Sasuke pressed. Naruto made a decision that balanced honesty with the Hokage's caution. "I have additional complications that occasionally manifest. Abilities that are still being understood. My training focused on control as much as development." Something shifted in Sasuke's expression, a recognition, perhaps, of partial truth rather than complete evasion. "These abilities, they're why you were placed on this team, aren't they? To be monitored." "We're both being monitored," Naruto countered gently. "You for your Sharingan potential, me for my unique characteristics. Kakashi-sensei is uniquely qualified to guide both." The acknowledgement of their parallel situations seemed to resonate with Sasuke. He stared into the fire for a long moment before speaking again. "Show me something," he said finally. "Something they taught you that you couldn't learn in the academy." Naruto hesitated, weighing the request against the Hokage's guidance. After careful consideration, he extended his hand toward the fire. With subtle manipulation of his standard chakra, not the lavender energy he kept carefully suppressed, he caused the flames to separate and form a miniature replica of Konoha's skyline, complete with the Hokage monument. Sasuke watched with undisguised interest. Elemental manipulation at the precision level. Most genin can barely produce a fireball, let alone shape it. "Fire isn't even my primary affinity," Naruto admitted. "Water and wind come more naturally." He allowed the fire to resume its normal pattern, hoping the demonstration had satisfied Sasuke's curiosity without revealing too much. To his surprise, the Uchiha's next question came from an unexpected direction. "The Hyuga girl, Hinata. You train with her, don't you? I've seen you entering the Hokage Tower together on Thursday afternoons." Naruto nodded cautiously. "We have complementary abilities that benefit from shared practice." "A Hyuga working outside clan supervision with a non-clan member," Sasuke observed. "That's unusual. Special circumstances," Naruto replied, echoing his earlier explanation. Something that might have been a smile briefly touched Sasuke's lips. "Special circumstances again." He stood, preparing to take the first watch. "You're an interesting contradiction, Naruto. You speak like someone twice your age but look like a child. You clearly possess advanced training but hide most of what you can do. Someday, I hope to understand why." As Sasuke moved to the perimeter of their camp, Naruto called after him softly, "Sasuke." When the Uchiha paused and looked back, Naruto continued, "I understand what it's like to be watched constantly, to have every action evaluated against expectations you didn't choose. If nothing else, we share that experience." For a moment, genuine surprise showed in Sasuke's expression, as though he had never considered that anyone else might understand his particular burden. He gave a slight nod before continuing to his watch position, leaving Naruto by the fire with the sense that a small but significant connection had been established. From his seemingly sleeping position, Kakashi observed the exchange with carefully concealed interest. The dynamics between his two extraordinary students were developing in unexpected ways, not the competitive rivalry he had anticipated, but something more nuanced. Something that, perhaps, contained the seeds of genuine understanding. Their journey continued northward the following day, the terrain gradually changing from dense forest to rocky highlands as they approached the border region. The weather deteriorated correspondingly, a biting wind carrying the first flakes of what promised to be a substantial snowstorm. "We should reach the outpost by nightfall," Kakashi informed T.Hem as they paused briefly on a rocky outcropping overlooking the valley below. "The storm front is moving faster than expected, though. We'll need to increase our pace." As they resumed their journey, the snow intensified, reducing visibility and coating the rocky path with treacherous ice. Naruto moved with unexpected sure-footedness, his chakra automatically adapting to the conditions, a skill he had developed during winter training sessions with Hinata by their frozen stream. They had been traveling for another hour when Naruto suddenly stiffened, his sensory abilities detecting an anomaly ahead. He raised his hand in the standard signal for caution, drawing both Kakashi and Sasuke to an immediate halt. 3 chakra signatures, Naruto reported quietly, his eyes closed in concentration. 200 meters ahead, concealed in the rock formation to the right of the path. One is suppressed but substantial, likely Jonin level. The others are Chunin or special Jonin. Sasuke glanced at him with barely concealed surprise. "You're a sensor type." Among other things, Kakashi interjected before Naruto could respond. "The question is, are they Land of Fire shinobi or potential hostiles?" Naruto concentrated further, extending his senses with careful precision. "Their chakra has a damp quality. Water affinity predominant. Likely Kurigakure. Ambush position," Sasuke concluded. Kakashi nodded, his expression becoming serious as he pushed up his Hitai to reveal his Sharingan. "The question is whether they're targeting us specifically or simply any leaf shinobi passing through this region. Either way, we need to proceed with extreme caution." He turned to his students. "This has just escalated beyond a standard C-rank mission. If they are indeed Kiri Nin with Jonin leadership, we're facing at minimum a B-rank combat situation. We should continue as if unaware of their presence," Naruto suggested. "Spring the ambush on our terms." Sasuke nodded in agreement. "Give them a false sense of advantage." "Precisely what I was thinking," Kakashi approved. "We'll proceed normally but be prepared to execute Formation Delta on my signal." As they resumed their path, Naruto discreetly created a shadow clone that transformed into a small snow fox and disappeared into the surrounding forest, a precaution that would provide additional sensory coverage. Meanwhile, he subtly adjusted his chakra flow to combat readiness while maintaining the appearance of an inexperienced genin. The ambush, when it came, was executed with professional precision. 3 water loans burst from the snow directly in their path while the actual attackers launched a coordinated attack from the stone outcropping, a large, masked shinobi wielding an enormous sword leading the assault. "Kakashi of the Sharingan," the sword wielder called out, his voice carrying even through the swirling snow. "The courier package, if you please. Hand it over, and you and the children might survive this encounter." "Zabuza Momochi," Kakashi identified, his tone conversational despite the tension evident in his stance. "Demon of the Hidden Mist and Rogue Ninja. You've come a long way to die in the snow." Naruto analyzed the situation with remarkable clarity despite the danger. Zabuza Momochi, A-rank missing nin, former member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist, wielder of the Kubikiribocho, master of silent killing technique. The 2 accompanying shinobi were less immediately identifiable, but their coordinated movements suggested extensive experience working together. "Formation Delta," Kakashi ordered calmly, and both genin moved instantly to predetermined positions, Sasuke to Kakashi's right flank, Naruto to the left, creating a triangular defense around the courier package. What followed was a demonstration of why Kakashi had earned his fearsome reputation. Moving with blinding speed, he engaged Zabuza directly while simultaneously providing coverage for his students against the secondary attackers. His Sharingan tracked every movement, every hand sign, seemingly anticipating attacks before they were fully formed. Sasuke proved his academy reputation well-earned, responding to the Chunin-level attacker with precision and skill that belied his age. His fire techniques created momentary advantages in the snowy battlefield, while his shuriken techniques repeatedly forced his opponent to abandon attack sequences. Naruto, meanwhile, faced the third attacker, a kunoichi-wielding Senbon with deadly accuracy. He maintained a defensive posture, analyzing her patterns while revealing only standard genin-level techniques. Through subtle sensory extension, he simultaneously monitored the overall battlefield, providing occasional warnings to Sasuke and Kakashi about attacks from their blind spots. The battle reached a critical juncture when Zabuza executed a complex water prison technique, momentarily trapping Kakashi in a sphere of condensed water. As their sensei became immobilized, both Sasuke and Naruto found themselves facing increasingly aggressive attacks from their respective opponents. Now things get interesting, Zabuza called through the swirling snow. Let's see how the little leaves handle themselves without their guardian. The kunoichi facing Naruto intensified her assault, launching a barrage of Senbon that threatened to overwhelm his defensive capabilities if he maintained his pretense of standard genin skills. Simultaneously, Sasuke found himself driven back by increasingly complex water techniques from his opponent. In that moment of crisis, Naruto made a calculated decision. Creating 4 shadow clones that engaged the kunoichi in close combat, he established momentary coverage that allowed him to initiate a more advanced technique without observation. His hands formed seals with practiced efficiency, and suddenly the snowfall around them intensified dramatically, transforming into a localized blizzard that drastically reduced visibility for everyone except Naruto himself, whose sensory abilities functioned independently of visual conditions. Using this advantage, he moved with unexpected speed toward Zabuza, drawing a specialized kunai from his equipment pouch. With precision developed through years of chakra control exercises, he infused the weapon with wind nature chakra, creating an invisible extension that doubled its effective reach. The attack caught Zabuza by surprise. Expecting a child's desperate move, he received instead a precisely targeted strike that disrupted his water prison technique, freeing Kakashi. In the moment of distraction, Naruto glimpsed something unexpected through the swirling snow, a masked figure observing from the tree line, chakra signature carefully suppressed but detectable to Naruto's enhanced senses. Kakashi, free from the water prison, immediately resumed offensive operations against Zabuza. Fall back to defensive positions, he ordered his students, correct L.Y. assessing that the battle had escalated beyond appropriate genin involvement. Naruto complied, retreating to Sasuke's position where the Uchiha was still engaged with his opponent. Together, they established a coordinated defense. Sasuke's fire techniques complementing Naruto's wind manipulation to create localized firestorms that forced their attackers to maintain distance. That wasn't standard genin technique. Sasuke muttered between attacks, his eyes never leaving the enemy shinobi. Special circumstances, Naruto replied with the ghost of a smile, earning a brief snort from his teammate. The battle's trajectory shifted dramatically when Kakashi maneuvered Zabuza into position for his lightning blade technique. As the crackling energy formed around his hand, illuminating the snowy battlefield with eerie blue light. The masked observer Naruto had detected earlier suddenly moved, Senbon flashing through the air to strike Zabuza's neck with surgical precision. The massive swordsman collapsed instantly, apparently dead. Before anyone could react, the masked figure appeared beside the fallen body. "Thank you for your assistance," the newcomer said in a soft voice, wearing W.H. And Naruto recognized as a Kurigakure Hunter Nin mask. "I've been tracking Zabuza for weeks. You created the opening I needed." As the Hunter Nin moved to collect Zabuza's body, Naruto experienced a sudden, jarring sensation, a pulse of lavender chakra rising unbidden from his core, accompanied by a whispered warning that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Deception. Death mask hides living eyes. Asterisk. The sensation was so unexpected, so viscerally powerful, that Naruto momentarily lost control of his carefully maintained chakra suppression. For just an instant, less than a heartbeat, his eyes shifted. Blue irises bleeding into lavender with concentric rings rippling outward. In that fraction of a second, his perception altered dramatically. The world seemed to slow, oars shifting to reveal chakra patterns invisible to normal sight. The supposed hunter nin's chakra appeared clearly connected to Zabuza's, the Senbon revealed as a precision technique inducing tempora. Death-like symptoms rather than actual mortality. Most disturbing of all, he could somehow perceive the hunter nin's actual face behind the mask. Delicate features framed by long dark hair, eyes held both determination and deep sadness. The vision ended as abruptly as it had come, Naruto's eyes returning to normal before anyone could notice the momentary change. But the knowledge remained, crystalline in its clarity. Wait, he called out, the word escaping before he could consider the implications of revealing such insight. They're working together, the hunter nin and Zabuza. That's a false death technique. Kakashi turned sharply, his Sharingan focusing first on the hunter nin and then on Naruto with equal intensity. The hunter nin hesitated, clearly surprised by the accusation. An interesting theory from a child, the masked figure said softly. But I assure you, my duty to Kurigakure is clear. Hunter nin dispose of bodies on sight, Naruto countered, drawing on knowledge from his specialized training. They don't transport them intact. And the Senbon placement is precise, pressure points that induce temporary paralysis resembling death. Kakashi moved forward, clearly reassessing the situation. He's right. Set down the body, hunter nin. Now, for a tense moment, it seemed the confrontation might escalate into renewed combat. Then the hunter nin made a decision, forming one-handed seals with remarkable speed. Another time, perhaps, the soft voice stated as ice mirrors suddenly formed around the masked figure and Zabuza's body. When circumstances are more favorable. Before Kakashi could intervene, both figures vanished through the ice mirrors, which shattered into countless fragments that mixed indistinguishably with the falling snow. A heavy silence fell over the battlefield. The two Chunin-level attackers had retreated during the confrontation between Kakashi and Zabuza, leaving the Konoha team alone in the swirling snow. How did you know? Kakashi asked finally, turning to Naruto with an intensity that made clear the significance of the question. About the false death technique. Naruto met his sensei's gaze steadily, knowing he could not reveal the momentary activation of what he now recognized had been the Rinne Sharingan, his first conscious experience of its visual capabilities. The chakra connection between them, he said instead. It fluctuated but didn't sever when the Senbon struck. And the placement was too precise, exactly where temporary paralysis points are located. He paused, then added a partial truth. I've studied medical texts on pressure points as part of my sensory training. Kakashi studied him for a long moment, his Sharingan seeming to look through rather than at his student. Finally, he nodded slightly and covered the eye once more. A remarkable observation from someone your age, he said, his tone making clear he suspected there was more to the explanation. One that likely saved our lives. Zabuza Momochi is not an opponent to underestimate, even when apparently defeated. Sasuke had remained silent throughout this exchange, his dark eyes moving between Kakashi and Naruto with calculating intensity. Now he stepped forward, brushing snow from his clothing with deliberate movements. The mission parameters have changed, he stated rather than asked. Zabuza will recover and make another attempt. Almost certainly, Kakashi agreed, his expression grim. Which means we need to reach the border outpost as quickly as possible and request reinforcements. He turned to Naruto. Can you sense any other hostiles in the vicinity? Naruto closed his eyes, extending his awareness outward. The brief activation of the Rinne Sharingan had left his chakra pathways unusually sensitive, allowing him to scan more extensively than normal. None within my range, he reported after a moment. But the hunter nin, the fake one, has an unusual chakra signature. Ice-based Kekkei Genkei, I believe. Potentially a survivor of the Yuki clan. Kakashi's visible eye widened slightly at this additional information. You determined that from brief exposure. Naruto realized he had revealed more than intended. The ice mirrors were a clue, he said, offering a plausible explanation. Combined with the chakra impression I sensed. Before Kakashi could question him further, Sasuke interjected. CTED. If they're regrouping for another attack, standing here discussing Naruto's sensory capabilities seems counterproductive. The practical observation broke the tension, and Kakashi nodded in agreement. You're right, we move immediately, maximum speed to the outpost. Formation Epsilon. Naruto on point with sensory extension, Sasuke covering rear, I'll maintain the package. As they resumed their journey through the intensifying snowstorm, Naruto found himself processing what had just occurred. The spontaneous activation of the Rinne Sharingan had been unlike anything in his training or preparation. It had felt simultaneously foreign and deeply familiar, as if ancient knowledge had temporarily surfaced through his consciousness. More concerning was how natural it had felt in the moment, not a technique to be learned and mastered, but an inherent ability awakening in response to danger. The implications were profound. If the Dujutsu could activate instinctively in combat situations, maintaining the secrecy the Hokage had advised would become increasingly difficult. His contemplation was interrupted by Sasuke, who had momentarily increased his pace to draw alongside Naruto. Quote, "Those weren't standard sensory techniques," the Uchiha said quietly, his voice pitched to carry only between them. No genin identifies chakra natures and Kekkei Genkai from brief exposure. Naruto considered his response carefully. "You're right," he acknowledged finally. "My sensory capabilities are more developed than I've been authorized to reveal." Rather than appearing triumphant at this confirmation, Sasuke's expression grew thoughtful, because they're connected to the Nine Tails. Partly, Naruto hedged, neither confirming nor denying the complete truth. Sasuke seemed to accept this limited explanation. "At least temporarily. Your intervention likely saved Kakashi-sensei. Whatever these abilities are, they proved their worth today." The acknowledgement, delivered without resentment or suspicion, represented a shift in their developing dynamic. Before Naruto could respond, Sasuke had already dropped back to his assigned position, leaving Naruto to consider this unexpected gesture of nascent trust. By nightfall, they reached the border outpost, a fortified compound nestled against the mountainside, lights glowing warmly through the continuing snowfall. They were greeted with appropriate security measures before being escorted to the commander's office to deliver their package and report the encounter with Zabuza. Momochi operating this far into fire territory is concerning, the outpost commander, a seasoned jonin named Takamura, observed after hearing their report. Intelligence suggested he was working as a mercenary in water country civil conflicts. Someone hired him specifically for this interception, Kakashi agreed. The question is who, and why they're interested in standard courier materials. Takamura's expression grew more serious. "Perhaps not as standard as you were led to believe. Part of your package contains early diplomatic communications regarding the upcoming Chunin exams, including preliminary security arrangements." He glanced at the genin. Information that would be valuable to certain parties. Naruto absorbed this revelation with interest. The Chunin exams represented a rare concentration of military talent and politica. Figures from multiple nations, a tempting target for those with disruptive ambitions. "We'll dispatch a hawk to Konoha immediately," Takamura continued. "In the meantime, you're welcome to rest here before beginning your return journey. Given Momochi's presence in the region, I'd recommend waiting for the reinforcements the Hokage will undoubtedly send." After being shown to their quarters, a all but comfortable room with 3 bunks, Kakashi addressed his students privately. "You both performed exceptionally well today," he began, his typical casual demeanor set aside for sincere assessment. "Sasuke, your fire techniques in adverse weather conditions showed remarkable control. Naruto, your sensory abilities and tactical awareness proved invaluable." He paused, his expression becoming more serious. "However, we also need to address the unexpected nature of this mission. What began as AC rank courier assignment became at minimum AB rank combat engagement against an A- rank missing nin. By standard protocols, I should have aborted the mission once we identified Zabuza as our opponent. But you didn't," Sasuke observed. "No," Kakashi acknowledged, "because I needed to assess how you would both function under genuine threat conditions." His gaze shifted to Naruto. "Some capabilities only reveal themselves under pressure." The implication was clear. Kakashi had suspected Naruto might manifest unusual abilities during a genuine combat situation. The revelation added context to the specialized team structure and accelerated mission assignment. "Were we being tested?" Naruto asked directly. "Everything is a test in the shinobi world," Kakashi replied. "But in this case, the encounter with Zabuza was genuine coincidence. My decision to proceed rather than retreat was the test element." Before either genin could respond to this revelation, a knock at their door announced a messenger from the outpost commander. "Hitaki-san," the Chunin said after Kakashi acknowledged him. "Commander Takamura requests your presence. A communication has arrived from Kumogakure that may relate to your encounter." Kakashi's visible eye narrowed slightly. "Kumogakure? That's unexpected." He turned to his students. "Rest. I'll return shortly." After Kakashi departed, Sasuke settled on one of the bunks, his expression thoughtful as he absently rubbed a bruise forming on his forearm from the earlier combat. "He was watching you more than me," he observed finally. "During the battle," Naruto nodded, seeing no point in denying the obvious. "He has his reasons. Related to these abilities you're not authorized to reveal," Sasuke concluded. He was silent for a moment before continuing. "My brother once told me that in the shinobi world, secrets are both weapons and weaknesses. The key is knowing which ones are which." The reference to Itachi, the first Sasuke had made in Naruto's presence, carried significant weight. Before Naruto could formulate a response, Sasuke continued. "Whatever you're hiding, it helped us today. That's enough for now." He lay back on the bunk, effectively ending the conversation. Naruto recognized the statement for what it was, not acceptance exactly, but a temporary suspension of suspicion. A preliminary trust extended on the basis of demonstrated value rather than complete transparency. For someone raised in isolation, distrusted by most of the village, this pragmatic acknowledgement represented something significant, perhaps the beginning of his first peer relationship based on mutual capability rather than adult-mandated interaction. The following morning brought clear skies and the arrival of reinforcements from Konoha, 2 special jonin dispatched to escort them back to the village. More intriguing was the unexpected diplomatic delegation from Kumogakure that had arrived during the night. A coincidence of timing, Kakashi explained as they prepared for departure. "Kumo has expressed concerns about border security given recent missing nin activities. Our report about Zabuza confirmed their intelligence." Naruto sensed there was more to the situation than Kakashi revealed, but before he could consider it further, they were summoned to a brief meeting in the outpost's conference room. There, they found Commander Takamura engaged in conversation with 2 Kumo shinobi, a tall, dark-skinned man with a thoughtful expression and a younger woman whose blonde hair was tied back in a practical style. "Ah, Team Kakashi," Takamura greeted them. "Allow me to introduce our guests from Kumogakure. This is Darui-san, special envoy from the Raikage, and Yugito ni, special jonin." The formal introductions proceeded with standard diplomatic courtesy, but Naruto found his attention drawn specifically to the kunoichi. Something about her chakra signature resonated with his sensory abilities, a familiar yet distinct pattern that reminded him of his own layered energies. When her eyes met his, he saw a flash of recognition there as well, not of him personally, but of something she sensed within him. Her gaze lingered a moment longer than protocol dictated before shifting back to Kakashi. "We understand you encountered Zabuza Momochi," Darui said, his tone casual despite the serious subject. "Our intelligence suggests he's been contracted by elements opposed to the upcoming diplomatic initiatives between our villages." "That aligns with our assessment," Kakashi agreed, though his specific target remains unclear. As the adults continued their discussion, Naruto maintained peripheral awareness while focusing his attention on the Kumo kunoichi. His specialized training had included extensive briefings on known Jinchuriki from other villages, and if his instincts were correct, Yugito ni carried the 2 tails, Matabi. This realization added interesting dimensions to the meeting. Kumogakure sending a Jinchuriki as part of a diplomatic delegation represented either extraordinary trust or deliberate display of military capability, perhaps both. When the meeting concluded with formal expressions of cooperation, Naruto found himself momentarily alone in the corridor with Yugito as the others departed ahead of them. "You contain the 9 tails," she said without preamble, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "But there's something else there too. Something older." The direct acknowledgement surprised him, though he maintained his composure. "And you carry the 2 tails," he responded quietly. A slight smile touched her lips. Most wouldn't recognize that without being told. Especially not a child. She studied him with renewed interest. "How old are you, really? Your chakra feels complex." 8. Naruto answered truthfully. Though I'm told I sometimes speak like I'm much older. 8. She repeated, genuine surprise showing briefly. And already a genin. Konoha starts them young these days. Special circumstances, he replied with what was becoming his standard explanation. Her expression shifted to one of knowing amusement. Yes, we Jinchuriki tend to collect those, don't we? Special circumstances, special training, special observation. She glanced in the direction Kakashi had departed. Special handlers. Kakashi-sensei is more than that. Naruto found himself defending, surprisingly protective of the relationship that had developed beyond its initial supervisory purpose. Yugito seemed to appreciate this loyalty. Good. We need connections beyond our burdens. She tilted her head slightly. Will you be participating in the upcoming Chunin exams in Konoha? I don't know, Naruto admitted. Our team formation is recent. If you do, she said, perhaps we'll have an opportunity for a more extended conversation. Jinchuriki rarely to exchange perspectives with others who truly understand. Before Naruto could respond, Kakashi reappeared at the end of the corridor. There you are, Naruto. We're departing in 5 minutes. Yugito straightened, her manner shifting seamlessly to formal professionalism. Your student was just expressing Konoha's appreciation for our intelligence sharing, Hataki-san. Very diplomatically for one so young. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled in what might have been amusement or suspicion. He has many surprising qualities. As they parted ways, Yugito gave Naruto a final glance that communicated something beyond words, a recognition of shared experience despite their different villages and circumstances. The brief connection with another Jinchuriki left Naruto with much to consider as they began their journey back to Konoha. The return trip proceeded without incident, the reinforcements proving unnecessary as no further attempts were made to intercept them. Sasuke remained thoughtfully quiet for much of the journey, occasionally studying Naruto with speculative interest but asking no further questions about his abilities. It was during their final night of travel, camped in the forests a half-day's journey from Konoha, that Naruto experienced the dream, more vivid and direct than any previous communication. In the dream vision, he stood in a realm of alien beauty, floating land. Masses suspended in a sky of impossible colors, gravity operating according to unfamiliar laws. Before him stood the white-haired woman who had appeared in fragments throughout his childhood dreams. But now with crystal clarity. Tall and regal, her features delicate yet powerful, the 2 horns extending from her forehead framing a third eye that contained concentric rings surrounding 9 tomo. You awakened my eyes today, she said, her voice resonating not through air but directly into his consciousness. Earlier than I had anticipated. Who are you? Naruto asked, though on some level he already knew the answer. I have been called many names across the ages, she replied. Rabbit goddess, demon, consumer of the god tree. But I was born Kaguya Otsutsuki, and a fragment of my essence resides within you. Why? He asked simply. Why me? Her expression remained impassive, yet he sensed something like satisfaction emanating from her. Because you represent a convergence of odd lines and circumstances that echo my own. The 9 tails you contain is but a fraction of the 10 tails that once empowered me. The Uzumaki vitality you inherited descends from my son Asura. And you. Our birth coincided with a celestial alignment that occurs once in a millennium. She moved closer, and Naruto felt himself unable to retreat, not restrained, but simply existing in a space where conventional movement had no meaning. But most importantly, she continued, you possess the capacity to contain power without being consumed by it. My sons feared what I had become. They feared true transcendence. You balance on the edge between human and divine, capable of understanding both perspectives. The Rinne Sharingan, Naruto said, connecting his earlier experience with what she was revealing. That's what activated during the battle. The first of many awakening gifts, she confirmed. The world has changed since my time, fragmented and diminished. What humans now call Kek. Igenkai are but pale shadows of what chakra once achieved at its pinnacle. She raised a slender hand, and suddenly they were surrounded by floating images, scenes of various dujutsu, elemental combinations, and physical transformations that Naruto recognized as the bloodline abilities of various clans. Byakugan, Sharingan, Rinnegan, all descended from my original eyes. Mokudan, Hyoten, Yoden, fragments of elemental mastery that once existed in unified form. Her gaze intensified. Within you lies the potential to reunify these scattered inheritances, to remember what has been forgotten. The implications were staggering. You're saying I could potentially access any Kekkei Genkai? Not immediately, and not without cost, she cautioned. Each awakening requires catalyst and sacrifice. The Rinne Sharingan emerged when your life and those of your companions were threatened, necessity breaking through limitation. Naruto processed this information with the analytical clarity that characterized his thinking. The Hokage and my teachers, they suspect something like this, don't they? That's why the specialized training, the secrecy. They glimpse shadows of the truth, Kaguya acknowledged. They fear what they cannot comprehend. Their caution is not entirely misplaced. Power without wisdom leads to destruction. But neither should you allow their limitations to become your own. What do you want from me? Naruto asked directly, sensing that this conversation represented a turning point. For the first time, something like emotion crossed her features, a complex mixture of ambition, longing, and what might have been regret. To remember, she said softly. To reclaim, to reunite what was sundered. Her third eye seemed to pulse within her light. My children defeated me, sealed me away, and divided my power. They feared what they could not control. But through you, through the convergence of bloodlines and the unique circumstances of your birth, aspects of what I was might exist again in the world. Not if it means harming others, Naruto stated firmly, his core values asserting themselves despite the dreamlike state. I won't be used as a weapon or a vessel for revenge. Surprisingly, this declaration seemed to please rather than anger her. Good. Conviction will serve you well in what comes. The path to remembering is not one of blind consumption but of conscious integration. She gestured, and the realm around them began to fade. We will speak again as more of your abilities awaken. Until then, know that what others call limitations are merely doors waiting to be opened. Naruto woke with a sharp intake of breath, finding himself staring at the canvas ceiling of their travel tent. Beside him, Sasuke slept undisturbed, while Kakashi's bedroll lay empty, the Jonin presumably on watch duty. Sitting up carefully, Naruto pressed his hands to his eyes, half expecting to feel the alien structure of the Rinne Sharingan. But his eyes remained normal, though the dream conversation lingered with unusual clarity in his mind. A nightmare. Kakashi's voice came quietly from the tent entrance where he had apparently just returned. Not exactly, Naruto replied, knowing better than to attempt deception with his perceptive sensei. More like a visitation. Kakashi settled cross-legged at the end of Naruto's bedroll, his expression serious in the dim light. The female presence again, Naruto nodded. Clearer this time, she identified herself as Kaguya Otsutsuki. If the name surprised Kakashi, he controlled his reaction well. What did she want? To explain what happened during the battle with Zabuza, Naruto said carefully. My eyes changed. I saw differently. She called it the Rinne Sharingan awakening. Kakashi was silent for a long moment. Processing this revelation, we suspected something like this might eventually manifest. The Rinne Sharingan is mentioned in the most ancient texts as the original dujutsu from which all others derived. To activate it spontaneously, however, he shook his head slightly. That exceeds even our most extreme theories. She said it was the first of many awakening gifts, Naruto continued, watching his sensei carefully. That I represent a convergence of bloodlines that could potentially access multiple Kekkei Genkai under the right circumstances. This information clearly alarmed Kakashi, though he maintained his composed exterior. Did she explain why? What purpose she has in facilitating these awakening powers? She talked about remembering, reclaiming, reuniting what was sundered, Naruto recalled. I think she views me as a way for aspects of her abilities to exist again in the world. And how do you feel about that role? Kakashi asked, the questi. On cutting directly to the heart of the matter. Naruto considered carefully before answering. Cautious. I told her I wouldn't be used as a weapon or for revenge. She seemed to approve of that position, strangely enough. He met Kakashi's gaze directly. I need to understand what's happening to me, sensei. These abilities are emerging whether we prepare for them or not. Kakashi nodded slowly. You're right. When we return to Konoha, we'll need to adjust your training accordingly. The Hokage will want to hear about this development directly. He paused, Then added, and Naruto, this informati on remains classified at the highest level. Not even Sasuke can be informed yet. He already suspects I'm hiding significant abilities, Naruto pointed out. Today's events only confirmed that suspicion. Suspicion is different from confirmation, Kakashi countered. The Rinne Sharingan has profound implications for the Uchiha legacy. Until we better understand your connection to it, that knowledge could be dangerous for both of you. Naruto reluctantly acknowledged the wisdom in this caution, though it complicated his developing relationship with his teammate. As Kakashi returned to his watch position, Naruto lay back down, his mind processing the implications of Kaguya's revelations. The convergence of bloodlines she had mentioned aligned with what little he knew of his heritage, only that he was an Uzumaki on his mother's side, with no information about his father. If his unusual abilities stemmed from this convergence, understanding his complete lineage became increasingly important. More immediately concerning was the apparent connection between emotional stress and the activation of these latent abilities. If danger to himself or others could trigger unpredictable manifestations, maintaining the secrecy the Hokage required would become increasingly difficult. As dawn approached and preparations began for the final leg of their journey home, Naruto found himself contemplating the meeting with Yugito Ni. Another Jinchuriki had recognized something unusual in his chakra signature, something beyond the nine tails. How many others might have similar insights? And what would it mean when these emerging abilities became impossible to conceal? The questions accompanied him as they departed camp, the rising sun casting long shadows ahead of them on the path toward Konoha, and whatever awaited him there. Their return to the village proceeded with standard protocols, mission debriefing with the Hokage, formal report submission, and medical evaluation for minor injuries sustained during combat. Throughout these procedures, Naruto observed Sasuke maintaining professional composure while clearly processing the events of their mission with intense internal focus. It was only after they were formally dismissed, standing outside the Hokage Tower in the warm afternoon sunlight, that Sasuke finally addressed what had been simmering beneath the surface. "You staying for an additional debriefing," he stated rather than asked, having noticed Kakashi's subtle signal for Naruto to remain behind. "Yes," Naruto confirmed, seeing no point in denial. "Certain aspects of the mission require specialized review." Sasuke nodded slightly, his expression unreadable. "The sensory abilities you displayed. The prediction about the Hunter Nin's deception. The specialized knowledge you shouldn't possess at your age or rank." Naruto remained silent, neither confirming nor denying these observations. After a moment, Sasuke continued, "Whatever you are, Naruto, you proved your value during this mission. That matters more than the secrets you're keeping." He turned to leave, then added, "For now." The conditional acceptance represented significant progress in their developing relationship, acknowledgement of Naruto's capabilities without demanding complete transparency. As Sasuke departed, Naruto found himself appreciating the pragmatic nature of the Uchiha's approach. His contemplation was interrupted by Kakashi's reappearance at the tower entrance. "The Hokage is ready for us," he said simply, leading Naruto back inside and up to a rarely used briefing room rather than the standard Hokage office. Inside, they found not only Hiruzen but also a white-haired man Naruto immediately recognized from descriptions and photographs, Jiraiya of the Sannin. Looking uncharacteristically serious as he studied various scrolls spread across the conference table. "Naruto," Hiruzen greeted him, his expression grave. "Kakashi has provided a preliminary report about the incident during your mission. I've asked Jiraiya to join us given his specialized knowledge regarding the matters at hand." The Sannin looked up, studying Naruto with intensity belied his normally carefree reputation. "So this is Minato and Kushina's boy," he said finally. "Last time I saw you, you were just an infant glowing with chakra no one could explain." His gaze sharpened. "Now you're activating dujutsu that haven't been seen since the Sage of Six Paths era." "It was momentary," Naruto clarified, "and instinctive rather than controlled." "That's what concerns us," Hiruzen interjected. "Kakashi mentioned you experienced a subsequent communication from the entity identifying itself as Kaguya Otsutsuki. I'd like you to recount that experience in detail." For the next hour, Naruto provided a comprehensive account of both the Rinne Sharingan activation during combat and the dream communication that followed. Jiraiya interrupted occasionally with specific questions about visual perceptions, chakra sensations, and the exact terminology Kaguya had used. When Naruto finished, Jiraiya exchanged a significant look with Hiruzen before addressing the boy directly. "What you've described confirms our worst suspicions while raising entirely new questions," he said frankly. "The ancient texts mention the Rinne Sharingan as Kaguya's original dujutsu, the progenitor of all visual bloodline abilities. That you activated it spontaneously suggests a direct connection rather than distant inheritance." She mentioned a convergence of bloodlines, Naruto recalled. "And something about a celestial alignment during my birth." Jiraiya nodded grimly. "The red moon phenomenon that occurred the night the Nine Tails attacked. Astronomers called it unprecedented. A lunar eclipse combined with unusual solar flare activity. What does all this mean for Naruto's development going forward?" Kakashi asked, bringing the discussion back to practical concerns. Hiruzen sighed heavily. "It means we must accelerate certain aspects of his training while implementing additional safeguards. If these abilities are awakening spontaneously in response to threat conditions, we need to establish protocols for when, not if, they manifest again in unpredictable circumstances. I want to understand what's happening to me," Naruto stated, his composure remarkable for a child his age. "If these abilities are emerging whether we prepare for them or not, I need to learn how to control them rather than be controlled by them." "A wise perspective," Jiraiya acknowledged. "And precisely why I've returned to Konoha more permanently. My research into the Sage of Six Paths legends has uncovered techniques that might help you integrate these emerging abilities without being overwhelmed by them." Naruto studied the Sannin with renewed interest. "You'll be involved in my training." "More than that," Hiruzen interjected. "Jiraiya is your godfather, Naruto. He has a personal as well as professional investment in your development." This revelation clearly surprised Naruto, who turned to Jiraiya with unmistakable questions in his expression. The Sannin had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "My intelligence network requires constant attention," he explained, though the justification sounded hollow even to his own ears. "Maintaining my cover as a wandering sage made regular visits impossible without compromising sensitive operations." Naruto absorbed this explanation without visible reaction, though something shifted in his chakra signature, a subtle fluctuation that those sensitive to such matters might have interpreted as disappointment carefully controlled. "Your expertise will be valuable regardless of past circumstances," he said finally, his formal tone a defense mechanism that hadn't escaped the adults' notice. Hiruzen intervened smoothly. "We'll establish a new training regimen immediately. Kakashi will continue as your Jonin Sensei or standard missions and team development, while Jiraiya will oversee specialized sessions focused on understanding and integrating these emerging abilities." "And my regular training with Hinata?" Naruto asked, the question revealing his priority. "Will continue," Hiruzen confirmed. "Her Byakugan's ability to perceive your chakra pathways provides invaluable insights. However, we should are including her in limited aspects of this expanded training, given what she may observe during your sessions together." This suggestion clearly pleased Naruto, though he maintained his composed exterior. "What about missions with Team Kakashi? If these abilities might manifest unpredictably during combat. For now, your team will focus on lower-risk assignments within Fire Country borders," Kakashi explained. "At least until we better understand the triggers and manifestations of these emerging capabilities." The practical limitations made sense, though Naruto found himself concerned about how Sasuke might react to what would appear as a demotion after their successful C-rank mission. As the meeting concluded with specific scheduling and security protocols established, Jiraiya approached Naruto directly. "I'd like to begin our specialized training tomorrow," he said. "There are particular meditation techniques from Mount Myoboku that might help you distinguish between your natural chakra and these additional energies." Naruto nodded his acceptance. "Will you also help me understand more about my heritage? The convergence of bloodlines Kaguya mentioned seems significant to these manifestations." A complex emotion crossed Jiraiya's features, something between pride and regret. "Yes," he said finally. "It's time you learned more about where you come from, Naruto." "So, Me of that information remains classified, but what I can share may help you contextualize what's happening to you. As they departed the secure meeting room, Naruto found himself walking beside Kaka. She down the spiral staircase of the Hokage Tower. You handled that well, his sensei observed. Most children would be either terrified or exhilarated by the emergence of such abilities. You seem analytical. I've had years to adjust to being different, Naruto replied with simple honesty. This is just another manifestation of that reality. Kakashi studied him thoughtfully. Just be EFUL that analytical distance doesn't become emotional detachment. Even exceptional abilities need to be guided by human connection and values. The observation struck Naruto more deeply than Kakashi might have realized. Throughout his childhood, he had developed careful emotional boundaries as protection against rejection and isolation. The gradual emergence of meaningful connections, with Hinata, with Kakashi, and potentially with Sasuke and now Jiraiya, represented unfamiliar territory. I'll remember that, he promised, recognizing the wisdom in the advice. As they reached the tower entrance, Kakashi placed a hand briefly on Naruto's shoulder. One day at a time, Naruto. One ability at a time. One connection at a time. That's how we navigate even the most exceptional circumstances. The simple guidance, offered with genuine concern, provided a grounding perspective as Naruto stepped out into the village street. Whatever awakening abilities might emerge, whatever ancient entity might speak through his dreams, his path forward would be defined by these incremental choices and connections. Walking through Konoha's busy afternoon streets, Naruto found himself newly aware of the complexity of his position. To most villagers, he remained simply the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, an object of fear or suspicion. To a handful of officials, he represented a strategic asset with unique capabilities. But increasingly, to those closest to him, he was becoming something more nuanced, a person navigating extraordinary circumstances with remarkable composure. As he passed the academy playground, where children his age practiced standard techniques he had mastered years ago, Naruto experienced a momentary sense of displacement, neither fully child nor adult, neither ordinary genin nor acknowledged prodigy. Carrying powers whose full extent remained unknown even to himself. The blue scarf Hinata had given him, carefully folded in his equipment pouch since the weather had warmed, served as a tactile reminder of the human connections that anchored him amidst these complexities. Whatever awakening powers might emerge in the days ahead, those connections would remain his most important inheritance. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Threads of Fate. Moonlight sliced through the canopy of Training Ground 44, casting dappled silver across the forest floor where Naruto stood motionless, eyes closed. Senses extended beyond conventional perception. Around him, the ancient trees creaked and whispered, home to creatures that never saw daylight, mutated insects, predatory mammals, and flora that hunted with patient malice. The forest of death earned its name honestly, though tonight it served a different purpose. Impressive range, Jiraiya murmured from his perch on a gnarled branch 30 meters away. How many? 17 distinct chakra signatures, Naruto replied without opening his eyes. 3 Chunin level on the perimeter, Anbu observers, most likely. 5 non-human signet, yours above mid-level, the large tigers in the northeastern quadrant. 9 smaller predators circling below us. Through the specialized chakra sensing techniques he'd refined over the past 4 months under Jiraiya's tutelage, Naruto perceived the forest as a tapestry of energy signatures, each living being a distinct thread in the complex weave of life and death that characterized this training ground. And the last one, Jiraiya prompted. Naruto's brow furrowed slightly in concentration. Directly beneath us, approximately 15 meters down, plant-based but with animal characteristics. A chakra structure I've never encountered before. Jiraiya dropped silently from the branch, landing beside his godson. That's what makes this forest unique, and why I chose it for tonight's exercise. The boundaries between conventional chakra classifications blur here. Perfect preparation for what you'll face in the exams. 4 months had passed since the mission to the northern border, 4 months of intensive training divided between Team Kakashi missions, specialized sessions with Jiraiya, and continued weekly training with Hinata. In that time, Naruto had grown both physically and in his understanding of the complex chakra systems that coexisted within him. Speaking of which, Naruto said, opening eyes that briefly flashed with concentric rings before settling back to their normal blue. How much should I reveal during the exams? Kakashi-sensei advises minimum necessary force, but Sasuke grows increasingly suspicious of my limitations. The question reflected Naruto's central challenge, balancing the Hokage's directive for discretion against the practical realities of combat situations that might trigger his more unusual abilities. Trust your instincts, Jiraiya advised, studying his godson with a mixture of pride and concern. You've shown remarkable restraint so far. Use what's necessary to protect yourself and your team, but avoid spectacle. Naruto nodded, having expected this balanced response. At 9 years old, he remained the youngest participant registered for the upcoming Chunin exams, though his capabilities exceeded many special Jonin in certain domains. His physical appearance had changed subtly over recent months, his formerly round face becoming more angular, his posture developing the unconscious grace of advanced chakra control. Most notable as his presence, an unusual gravity that drew attention despite his deliberate efforts to remain unobtrusive. What about the communications? Naruto asked, referring to the dream encounters with Kaguya that had continued intermittently. They've increased in frequency. Jiraiya's expression grew more serious. Any new information? She's been showing me the dimensional techniques, Naruto explained, kneeling to touch the forest floor. Beneath his fingers, a small ripple distorted space briefly, not quite a technique yet, more an instinctive manipulation of reality's fabric. Nothing combat applicable, just awareness exercises. Learning to perceive the boundaries between dimensions. And the 9 tails. Any contact there. Occasional impressions. Mostly animosity toward her. Naruto rose, brushing dirt from his hands. It knows something significant approaches. Something connected to these exams. This information aligned with intelligence Jiraiya had gathered through his network. Unusual movement among organizations monitoring Jinchuriki activities, particularly a group called Akatsuki. The timing of the Chunin exams, bringing multiple villages together in Konoha, presented both opportunity and vulnerability. Remain vigilant, Jiraiya advised. Especially during the Forest of Death portion. Your team configuration has already drawn attention, the last Uchiha in Konoha's Jinchuriki on the same squad. With the Hyuga heiress recently added as your third member. The completion of their team had come 2 months prior, when Hinata Hyuga was officially assigned to Kakashi, a political compromise between the Hokage and Hiashi Hyuga that acknowledged the unusual benefits of their training compatibility while maintaining important clan connections. Sasuke remains complicated, Naruto observed, diplomatically describing the evolving dynamic with his teammate. Our capabilities complement each other effectively, but his focus remains fixed on power acquisition for specific purposes. Revenge is a powerful motivator, Jiraiya noted, though rarely a fulfilling one. Their conversation ended as a distant howl signaled approaching dawn. The Knight's training, focused on distinguishing between conventional and dimensional chakra, had achieved its primary objectives. Tomorrow would bring the official beginning of the Chunin exams, and with them, the next phase of Naruto's increasingly complex journey. Get some rest, Jiraiya advised. And Naruto, he paused, uncharacteristically serious. Whatever happens in these exams, remember that you control these abilities. They don't control you. Naruto nodded, accepting the reminder of agency that had become central to his training philosophy. As he departed the forest, leaving Jiraiya to continue his own investigations. He couldn't shake the sensation of threads pulling taut around him, unseen connections drawing together for purposes yet unrevealed. The examination room buzzed with tense anticipation as genin from 5 nations gathered for the first stage of the Chunin exams. Teams clustered in national groups, sizing up competition with expressions ranging from nervous to arrogant. Against this backdrop, Team Kakashi entered with measured confidence, Sasuke's cold assessment sweeping the room, Hinata's Byakugan briefly activating to catalog chakra signatures, and Naruto maintaining deliberate neutrality despite instantly identifying several participants of particular interest. Quite the gathering, Kakashi observed, having escorted them to the entrance. Remember your preparation and trust each other's capabilities. With a casual salute, he departed, leaving them to navigate the complex social dynamics unfolding before them. They hadn't taken 3 steps when a loud voice cut through the murmur. Well, if it isn't the famous Team Kakashi. Konoha's Special Project Squad. A boy with wild brown hair and red facial markings approached, flanked by a quiet, sunglasses-wearing teammate and a kunoichi with distinctive purple hair. Naruto recognized them immediately. Team Kurenai, comprising Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Yakumo Kurama. Inuzuka, Sasuke acknowledged coolly. Still compensating with volume what you lack in skill. Kiba bristled visibly while his Ninken partner Akamaru growled from within his jacket. Big words from someone who needed special arrangements to graduate. At least we earned our place through the academy like normal shinobi. Kiba-kun, Hinata interjected with quiet authority that reflected her recent growth in confidence. These examinations are about demonstrating our current capabilities, not debating our paths to them. The diplomatic intervention reflected the careful balance Hinata had cultivated, maintaining connections with her former classmates while committing fully to her placement on Team Kakashi. Her training over recent months had accelerated dramatically, her Byakugan developing nuances that surprised even her clan elders. Always the peacemaker, Hinata, Kiba grumbled, though his posture relaxed slightly. Even after they pulled you away to join the prodigy squad. Before the conversation could continue, a silver-haired Konoha genin approached their group, adjusting his glasses with a practiced gesture. You might want to lower your voices, he advised with a friendly smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. You're attracting attention from some rather unfriendly quarters. Naruto's senses immediately categorized the newcomer, chakra levels inconsistent with stated genin rank, medical specialization evident in his energy patterns. Subtle scent of snakes beneath standard medicinal compounds. A discrepancy that warranted caution. Kabuto Yakushi, the silver-haired teen introduced himself. 7-time exam participant. Unfortunately, 7 failures suggests either remarkable persistence or questionable competence, Sasuke observed dryly. Kabuto laughed good-naturedly. A bit of both, perhaps. Though it's given me time to gather quite the collection of information. He produced a deck of cards with a flourish. My specialty, data cards on participants. Anyone you're curious about. The offer represented an obvious intelligence-gathering operation, both providing information to gauge their interests and assessing their capabilities through their reactions. Sasuke and Kiba both leaned forward with interest, while Hinata maintained polite distance. Naruto, however, focused on the subtle fluctuations in Kabuto's chakra, patterns indicating deception beneath the helpful facade. Gaara of the Desert, Sasuke requested, naming the red-haired Suna genin standing ominously apart from the crowd. Kabuto pulled a card with practiced efficiency, channeling chakra to reveal its contents. Gaara of the Desert, genin from Sunagakur. Mission history includes 8 C ranks and, remarkably, a B rank with 0 injuries recorded. Son of the Cage, techniques largely unknown but rumored to involve sand manipulation. Considered extremely dangerous even by his teammates. The assessment aligned with Naruto's own observations, though it omitted the most significant detail, one he had sensed immediately upon the Suna team's arrival. Gaara contained a Biju, most likely the one-tail, Shukaku. The tightly coiled, malevolent chakra signature was unmistakable to Naruto's specialized senses. Anyone else? Kabuto prompted. Rock Lee of Konoha, Kiba suggested, gesturing toward a green-clad genin performing stretches in the corner. As Kabuto continued displaying his intelligence collection, Naruto noticed several significant reactions around the room. The sound teams barely contained hostility, the calculated observation from the Suna siblings, and most interestingly, a red H-aired kunoichi from grass whose chakra signature contained something hauntingly familiar. When she caught him studying her, the grass kunoichi adjusted her glasses with a nervous gesture, quickly averting her gaze. But not before Naruto had catalogued her chakra pattern, an Uzumaki signature, unmistakable in its vitality and structural composition. The discovery sent a jolt of recognition through him. Another Uzumaki, here in the exams. A connection to his maternal lineage he hadn't anticipated. Before he could consider approaching her, the examination proctors arrived, led by a scarred Tokub Jonin who immediately established dominance through carefully cultivated killing intent. Listen up, worthless aspirants, Ibiki Morino announced, his scarred face set in a perpetual scowl. Take your assigned seats immediately. The first examination begins now. The written examination proved precisely what Jiraiya had predicted, a test of information gathering rather than factual knowledge. For Naruto, whose sensory abilities allowed him to track the movements of planted Chunin participants writing correct answers, the challenge presented minimal difficulty. More interesting was observing his teammates' approaches, Sasuke using his partially developed Sharingan to copy movements, Hinata employing her Byakugan with subtle precision. The final question, when revealed as a test of resolve rather than knowledge, demonstrated Ibiki's psychological acumen. Numerous teams eliminated themselves through hesitation, while others remained through varied motivations, ambition, pride, loyalty, or in some cases, simple stubbornness. Team Kakashi never wavered, each member recognizing the underlying purpose without needing to communicate. When Anko Mitarashi crashed through the window to announce the second examination, Naruto exchanged a brief glance with his teammates, silent acknowledgement that the true challenges were only beginning. The forest of death awaited, and with it, trials beyond mere combat and survival. 5 days to obtain both scrolls and reach the central tower, Sasuke summarized as they gathered before their assigned gate. Standard wilderness survival combined with combat against motivated opponents. We should establish parameters for engagement, Hinata suggested, her Byakugan briefly activating to scan their surroundings. Some teams will target us specifically due to our unique composition. The assessment was accurate. Throughout the first examination, Naruto had noted multiple teams paying particular attention to their group, the Sand siblings, the Sound team, and several others who recognized the strategic value of eliminating the Uchiha heir or Konoha's Jinchuriki early in the competition. Defensive perimeter extending 20 meters, sensory coverage to 200. Naruto proposed, outlining the security approach they had refined during training. Hinata's Byakugan for immediate threat detection, my sensory techniques for wider coverage. Sasuke's Sharingan for combat analysis. And if we encounter specialized opposition? Sasuke pressed, the question containing layers of meaning. After months of working together, he had witnessed enough of Naruto's situational adjustments to suspect significant capabilities remained unrevealed. We adapt appropriately, Naruto replied simply. The gate swung open with a metallic shriek, and they entered the forest at measured pace, not the headlong rush employed by many teams, but the deliberate advance of those conserving energy for sustained operation. Their first priority, establishing distance from the entry point where initial conflicts would concentrate. 2 hours later, positioned in defensible territory near a small stream, they analyzed their situation. Earth Scroll, Sasuke confirmed, securing their assigned scroll in a specialized pouch. We need a Heaven Scroll to complete the set. 9 teams within my current sensory range, Naruto reported, kneeling in meditation posture to extend his awareness. 3 moving away from us. 4 engaged in combat approximately 800 meters northwest. 2 moving methodically in our general direction, likely tracking rather than random movement. Can you identify their village affiliations? Sasuke asked, preparing equipment for potential engagement. Naruto focused more intently, chakra patterns shifting subtly beneath his skin. Grass Shinobi. 3-person cell, standard formation. Lead position shows unusual chakra signature, Jonin level at minimum, possibly higher, heavily suppressed. This assessment immediately altered their tactical approach. A Jonin level chakra signature indicated either exceptional genin talent or, more likely, infiltration by someone well above the stated examination parameters. Threat assessment, Sasuke prompted. Hi. Naruto replied without hesitation. The chakra pattern contains irregularities, not standard human configuration. Hinata activated her Byakugan, extending her visual perception toward the approaching team. After several seconds of intense focus, she drew a sharp breath. The lead grass shinobi has a completely artificial chakra network overlaid on their natural system. I've never seen anything like it. The information confirmed Naruto's suspicion that they faced something beyond standard examination parameters. Evasion recommended, he concluded. This represents an unknown variable outside mission objectives. Agreed, Sasuke nodded, surprisingly willing to avoid unnecessary combat, a sign of his developing tactical maturity. We move northeast. Establish new position, and target standard genin teams for scroll acquisition. They had just secured their equipment when Naruto stiffened, sensory abilities detecting a sudden shift in the approaching chakra. Incoming, he warned. They've accelerated directly toward our position. Somehow they've. A violent gust tore through their location, separating the team with hurricane force. Naruto maintained his position through chakra anchoring, while Hinata and Sasuke were thrown in opposite directions despite their defensive techniques. Through the settling debris RGED a single figure, a grass kunoichi with an unnaturally wide smile that stretched the skin of her face in ways that defied normal anatomy. My, she said, her voice carrying a sibilant quality that raised primal warning signals. What an interesting group of genin. The Uchiha heir, the Hyuga heiress, and her gaze fixed on Naruto with sudden, intense focus. Something unexpected. Yuto immediately recognized the true threat beneath the disguise, chakra patterns, vocal characteristics, and the unmistakable serpentine quality identifying one of Konoha's most notorious missing nin. Orochimaru, he stated calmly, dropping pretense as he moved to create distance between them. The grass kunoichi's face registered momentary surprise before splitting into an even wider smile. How interesting. A mere genin recognizing me through complete disguise. He, made a theatrical gesture, peeling away the borrowed face to reveal the pale features of the legendary Sannin. You're more perceptive than reported. Nine-Tails child, why are you here? Naruto demanded, simultaneously extending his senses to locate his teammates. Sasuke was regrouping approximately 50 meters east, while Hinata had landed in a defensive position to the northwest. Originally, to evaluate young Sasuke's development, Orochimaru admitted with disturbing casualness. The Uchiha bloodline holds particular interest for my research. But now, his serpentine eyes narrowed with scientific curiosity. I find myself intrigued by you, Naruto Uzumaki. Your chakra contains anomalies that warrant closer examination. The implication was clear. Orochimaru somehow sensed the layered chakra systems within Naruto, perhaps even detecting traces of Kaguya's influence. The situation had escalated beyond standard combat. This represented an existential threat requiring immediate intervention. Naruto made a decision, forming a familiar cross-shaped hand seal. Shadow clone technique, he announced. Producing 20 identical clones that immediately scattered in multiple directions, some toward his teammates, others to create defensive coverage. How amusing, Orochimaru observed. But ultimately futile. Did you think? His statement cut off abruptly as Naruto executed a technique he had developed privately, channeling chakra through his shadow clones to create a sensory disruption. Field that temporarily obscured his precise location. It wouldn't fool a Sannin for long, but it created critical seconds to implement emergency protocols. One clone reached Sasuke, who was already moving back toward the conflict zone. Orochimaru of the Sannin, the clone reported rapidly. S-rank threat beyond our parameters. Emergency Protocol 7. Sasuke's expression hardened at the OCOL designation, one they had established for situations requiring immediate mission abandonment and Konoha reinforcement. Without argument, he changed direction toward the emergency rendezvous point, recognizing that even his ambitions took secondary priority to village security in the face of such a threat. Another clone reached Hinata, delivering the same information. Her Byakugan was already active, scanning the battlefield with increasing alarm as she detected Orochimaru's true chakra levels now that he had dropped his disguise. Protocol acknowledged, she confirmed. But Naruto, what about you? I'll delay and extract, the clone assured her. Primary objective is alert transmission to Anbu forces. As his teammates implemented evacuation procedures, Naruto himself employed a Chinique Jiraiya had only recently introduced, a space-time manipulation that created momentary dimensional pockets. Not fully developed transportation like the fourth Hokage's techniques, but sufficient to create confusion and limited mobility advantages. Orochimaru, having dispersed several shadow clones with contemptuously casual taijutsu, paused as he detected the unusual chakra signature of this technique. Now that is interesting, he murmured, genuine scientific curiosity evident beneath his predatory demeanor. Space-time manipulation from a genin. Your file clearly requires updating. The Sannin moved with blinding speed. closing distance despite Naruto's evasive maneuvers. A pale hand extended, fingers elongating unnaturally as they aimed for Naruto's throat. Let's see what other surprises you contain. The attack never connected. In the microsecond before impact, something shifted in Naruto's chakra system, a protective response triggered by imminent threat. His eyes flashed, blue irises bleeding into concentric rings surrounded by 9 tomo, and reality itself seemed to warp around the point of contact. Orochimaru's extended hand passed through what appeared to be solid flesh but encountered nothing. His momentum carrying him forward unexpectedly as Naruto's physical form seemed to exist in a slightly different dimensional phase. Extraordinary, the Sannin breathed. Recovery instant despite his surprise. The Rinne Sharingan. In a child. Impossible. The momentary manifestation faded as quickly as it had appeared, Naruto's eyes returning to normal as he leapt backward, creating distance. The activation had been instinctive rather than controlled, draining significant chakra and leaving him momentarily vulnerable. Orochimaru's expression transformed, from scientific interest to predatory intensity. Oh, you are a prize beyond imagining, Naruto-kun. Far more valuable than I anticipated. The 9 tails container with the legendary dujutsu of the rabbit goddess herself. Such potential deserves proper cultivation. The Sannin formed hand seals with blinding speed, his killing intent spiking to suffocating levels. 5-element seal, he announced, fingers glowing with ominous purple chakra as he drove forward with unstoppable momentum. Naruto attempted evasion, but Orochimaru's speed exceeded his defensive capabilities. The 5-point seal slammed into his abdomen, directly over the existing 8 trigrams seal containing the 9 tails. Pain exploded through his system as the foreign chakra disrupted his carefully balanced energy networks. A temporary measure, Orochimaru explained conversationally as Naruto collapsed to his knees, chakra systems in disarray. To prevent interference while I extend a gift to young Sasuke. Well, I'll have time for more thorough examination later, I assure you. Through dimming consciousness, Naruto perceived Orochimaru's departure, moving with preternatural speed in the direction Sasuke had taken. The implication was clear. Despite witnessing the momentary activation of the Rinne Sharingan, the Sannin maintained his original objective regarding the Uchiha bloodline. As darkness closed in, Naruto forced his remaining chakra into maintaining a single shadow clone, one that could warn his teammates about Orochimaru's continued pursuit. Then, consciousness failed him entirely, his body slumped into the forest floor as chakra systems struggled to reintegrate after the disruptive seal application. In the darkness of unconsciousness, a familiar presence stirred, ancient, powerful, and distinctly feminine. Foolish serpent, Kaguya's voice echoed through his mindscape. He seeks to bind what he cannot comprehend. Awareness returned gradually, Naruto's senses cataloging his environment before. His eyes opened. Damp earth beneath him, forest canopy above, altered chakra flow within. And nearby, a presence. Female, unfamiliar yet somehow recognizable, cautious yet concerned. I know you're awake, a voice stated. Clinical in its assessment but underlined with nervous energy. Your breathing pattern changed approximately 40 seconds ago. If you're planning an attack, I should mention. I've already treated your injuries and could have eliminated you multiple times while you were unconscious. Naruto opened his eyes to find the red-haired grass kunoichi from the examination room kneeling beside him. Adjusting her glasses with a precise movement. Up close, her features displayed classic Uzumaki characteristics. Crimson hair several shades darker than Kushina's had been in photographs. Fair skin with subtle undertones that indicated significant chakra capacity, and a facial structure that resonated with what Naruto recognized from his limited knowledge of his maternal lineage. You're Uzumaki, he stated, leveraging himself carefully into sitting position despite protesting muscles. Surprise flashed across her features before being replaced by cautious calculation. How could you possibly know that? My documentation lists me as Karen of Kusagaku. Your chakra signature, Naruto explained, conducting an internal assessment of his disrupted systems. Uzumaki chakra has distinctive characteristics, density patterns, circulation dynamics, color harmonics. Yours is unmistakable. Karen's expression cycled rapidly through suspicion, scientific curiosity, and dawning realization. You're a sensor type, advanced level, based on that assessment. Her eyes narrowed behind her glasses. Wait, You recognized Uzumaki chakra specifically. How? The clan was destroyed decades ago. Not entirely, Naruto replied, deciding that limited truth served better than evasion with a potential clan member. I'm Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha. The revelation visibly startled her, oceans flickering across her face too quickly to categorize completely: shock, disbelief, hope, suspicion, calculation. That's impossible, she finally stated, though uncertainty had crept into her voice. I'm the last one, the only survivor from our settlement in Grass Country. There were scattered survivors from Uzushiogekure's fall, Naruto explained, drawing on historical knowledge provided during his specialized education. My mother among them. She came to Konoha before I was born. Karen stared at him with naked intensity, her sensory abilities, evidently considerable, evaluating his chakra signature. After several seconds, her shoulders slumped slightly. It's true, she whispered, the clinical facade cracking to reveal momentary vulnerability. Your core chakra pattern, it matches the structural framework of Uzumaki life force. The moment of connection hung between them, two survivors of a scattered clan, meeting by apparent chance in a forest designed for conflict. Then, as if recognizing her momentary emotional exposure, Karen's expression hardened back into professional assessment. You've been subjected to a complex chakra seal, she stated, adjusting her glasses. Again, a nervous tick revealing more than she likely intended. 5-point configuration overlaid on an existing spiral pattern containment seal. The interference patterns are causing significant disruption to your energy circulation. Naruto nodded, impressed by the accuracy of her analysis. Orochimaru, he confirmed. You have medical training. Among other skills, she acknowledged vaguely. Your chakra pathways are unlike anything I've encountered. Multiple systems layered in configurations that shouldn't be stable yet somehow function in harmonic resonance. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What exactly are you? The directness of the question, combined with her evident Uzumaki heritage, prompted Naruto to offer more transparency than he typically would. Complicated, he answered simply. The outer seal contains the 9 tails. The underlying systems are still being understood. Recognition dawned in her expression. Your Konoha's Jinchuriki. It wasn't a question, but her tone. Lacked the fear or disgust such identification typically generated. Instead, she seemed clinically intrigued. That explains certain anomalies, but not all. The tertiary system particularly, it's neither human nor Biju in structure. Her perceptiveness confirmed what Naruto had suspected. Karen possessed sensor abilities potentially exceeding even his own, at least in diagnostic precision. Before he could determine how much additional information to share, a spike of malevolent chakra flared in the distance, familiar, rage-filled, and distinctly inhuman. Shukaku, he identified immediately, recognizing the one-tail's signature. Active and partially manifested. Karen's head snapped toward the disturbance. Another Jinchuriki. Here, that's the redhead from Sand, isn't it? His chakra was disturbing. Gaara, Naruto confirmed, forcing himself to stand despite the disruptive seal's effects. And based on that chakra spike, he's engaged with someone. Someone I know. Extending his senses despite the interference, Naruto detected the familiar signatures of his teammates. Sasuke's lightning-aligned chakra flaring erratically, Hinata's precise gentle fist techniques disrupting flow of sand infused with Shukaku's energy. They were fighting defensively, clearly outmatched by Gaara's increasingly unstable manifestation. I need to go, Naruto stated, gathering what functional chakra he could access. My teammates are in danger. You're in no condition to fight, Karen objected, her clinical assessment carrying unexpected concern. That seal has disrupted approximately 60% of your chakra access. You'll be functioning at less than half capacity. Irrelevant, Naruto replied, already calculating the most efficient route to his teammates' location. They need assistance regardless of my condition. Karen studied him with an unreadable expression before sighing in apparent exasperation. Fine, but I'm coming with you. When Naruto raised a questioning eyebrow, she continued defensively, for research purposes. I've never observed a Jinchuriki conflict directly. The data could prove valuable. The justification was transparent rationalization, but Naruto accepted it without comment. Having another Uzumaki, especially one with medical and sensory capabilities, could prove advantageous regardless of her stated motivations. Stay behind me and main. Coin sensory coverage of our rear quadrant, he instructed, falling naturally into tactical leadership. Orochimaru remains unaccounted for, and this confrontation may draw his attention. Karen nodded with surprising readiness, falling into formation as they moved rapidly toward the escalating conflict. Naruto noted her efficient movement patterns, not combat optimized but displaying the spatial awareness and energy conservation of a well-trained support specialist. So, she said as they traversed the forest canopy, exactly how many of us are left? Uzumaki, I mean, unknown, Naruto admitted. Records are fragmented. I've confirmed 3 including us. There are rumors of others. 3, she repeated softly, the single word containing volumes of emotion she quickly suppressed. Better than just me, I suppose. The simple statement revealed more about her history than any detailed explanation could have: isolation, survival, the burden of believing oneself the last of a lineage. Naruto recognized the experience intimately, though from a different perspective. After this examination concludes, he offered, I have access to what remains of Konoha's Uzumaki archives. You would be welcome to review them. The invitation represented significant trust. Those archives contained classified information about sealing techniques and chakra manipulation that would be considered highly sensitive. Yet something about this unexpected clan connection prompted Naruto to extend bridges he typically kept carefully raised. Karen's expression revealed momentary surprise before settling into cautious interest. I'll consider it, she replied, the deliberate neutrality of her tone belied by the hopeful fluctuation in her chakra signature. Further conversation ceased as they approached the battle zone, a clearing in the forest that had been transformed into a wasteland of sand, splintered trees, and impact craters. At its center, Gaara stood with sand swirling around him in violent patterns. His form partially transformed with Shukaku's features manifesting along his right side. Facing him, Sasuke maintained a defensive position despite visible exhaustion, while Hinata employed gentle fist techniques to disrupt the animated sand threatening to engulf them. Blood, Gaara was saying, his voice distorted and overlaid with inhuman tones. Mother wants your blood, needs your blood to prove my existence. The sand lashed forward in multiple tendrils, forcing Sasuke and Hinata into desperate evasive maneuvers. Sasuke's Sharingan, now fully manifested with 2 Tomo in EAC. Tracked the attacks with precision his body struggled to match, while Hinata's Byakugan allowed her to target chakra points in the animated sand, temporarily disrupting its cohesion. Neither technique provided sustainable defense against Gaara's increasingly unhinged assault. He's unstable, Karen observed clinically from their observation position. The Biju's chakra and his own are improperly integrated, more parasitic than symbiotic. The seal appears fundamentally flawed. Intentionally so, Naruto confirmed, having reached similar conclusions. He was weaponized rather than properly trained as a Jinchuriki. Without further discussion, Naruto created 3 shadow clones, the maximum his disrupted chakra system could currently maintain, and sent them to extract his teammates' While he prepared for direct confrontation. Stay back, he instructed Karen. This will require specialized countermeasures. Despite Orochimaru's 5-element seal disrupting his chakra network, Naruto retained access to certain fundamental techniques. Creating a final shadow clone to maintain perimeter security, he entered the clearing directly, positioning himself between Gaara and his teammates as the clones worked to extract them. Another one, Gaara growled, his partially transformed face twisting into a grotesque grin. Mother says your blood will be sweetest of all. She recognizes what you contain. Naruto assessed the situation with clinical precision. Gaara's transformation had progressed to approximately 40% manifestation, with Shukaku's influence evident in both physical changes and deteriorating mental stability. Conventional combat techniques would prove ineffective against the sand defense system, particularly with Naruto's chakra access limited by Orochimaru's seal. This situation required alternative approaches. Gaara of the desert, Naruto addressed him directly, voice calm despite the killing intent saturating the clearing. Your seal is deteriorating. The entity you call Mother is manipulating your perception. The One Tail is not your parent, it's a separate consciousness using your emotional vulnerabilities to gain control. The direct Assessment caused momentary confusion in Gaara's expression before rage reasserted itself. Lies. Mother is the only one who loves me. The only one who confirms my existence through the blood of others. I understand you. Naruto continued steadily, monitoring his teammates' extraction progress peripherally. I contain the 9 tails as you contain the 1 tail. But our seals are different. Relationships with our Biju are different. You understand nothing. Gaara roared, sand erupting around him in violent spikes that shot toward Naruto with lethal intent. Rather than conventional evasion, Naruto employed a technique he had developed under Jiraiya's guidance, channeling his limited accessible chakra to create a momentary dimensional shift. Not true intangibility, but a partial PHA difference that allowed solid matter to pass through his position with reduced effect. The sand spears penetrated his space but caused only superficial damage rather than the impalement Gaara had intended. The technique required precise calculation, however, and with his disrupted chakra system, Naruto could maintain it only momentarily. Gaara's eyes widened in surprise and increased rage. What are you? How did you do that? Capitalizing on the momentary psychological advantage, Naruto closed distance rapidly, reaching Gaara before the sand defense could fully re-establish. With precision, born from years of specialized training, he placed his palm directly against Gaara's forehead, not as an attack, but as a connection point. Let me show you, he said quietly, channeling chakra throw. The contact point in a technique Jiraiya had warned was theoretically possible but exceptionally dangerous, a direct Jinchuriki to Jinchuriki consciousness link. For a heartbeat that seemed to extend eternally, their mindscapes connected. Naruto perceiving Gaara's lifetime of isolation, rejection, and weaponization, while Gaara glimpsed Naruto's structured development, controlled power, and embryonic but genuine connections. More significantly, both Biju became momentarily aware of each other through this connection. The 9 tails, though suppressed by Orochimaru's seal, radiated ancient recognition toward Shukaku. Not affection, certainly, but the acknowledgement of shared origin and divided power. The connection severed as abruptly as it had formed, both boys staggering backward from the psychological impact. Gaara clutched his head, the partial transformation receding slightly as confusion warred with ingrained rage. What did you? How did you? He stammered, sand swirling erratically around him, reflecting his disrupted emotional state. We are the same, Naruto stated simply, maintaining eye contact despite the danger. Different paths, different methods, different villages, but the same fundamental existence. Containers for power beyond human comprehension. The statement penetrated where combat could not have, reaching the isolated human beneath the monstrous exterior. For perhaps the first time in his life, Gaara encountered someone who genuinely understood his existence, not as a weapon or a monster, but as a person carrying an impossible burden. You have people, Gaara said finally. The observation drawn from the brief mindscape connection. People who see you, not just what you contain. Yes, Naruto confirmed. It's possible, Gaara. Connection without destruction. Existence confirmed through bonds rather than blood. The concept clearly struggled against years of conditioning and Shukaku's malevolent influence. Sand continued swirling, though its patterns had shifted from offensive to agitated, reflecting internal conflict rather than murderous intent. Why should I believe you? Gaara demanded, though genuine question underlay the aggression. Why should I accept anything but what mother has taught me? Because she's lying to you, Naruto replied simply. The voice you call mother isn't your parent. It's Shukaku, the one tail, manipulating your isolation and pain for its own purposes. This truth, delivered without judgment or attack, struck Gaara with visible impact. The sand around him faltered, dropping momentarily as his concentration wavered. Then what am I? He asked, the question containing the existential uncertainty at his core. If not mother's instrument, what purpose do I serve? The question reflected Gaara's fundamental wound, his value measured solely through his function as a weapon, his existence justified only through violence. Naruto recognized the distorted mirror of what his own life might have become without the third's intervention and structured guidance. That's for you to determine, Naruto answered. Not your father, not your village, not the Biju within you. Your existence has inherent value beyond function. Your purpose is yours to define. The concept appeared completely foreign to Gaara, whose expression cycled through confusion, desperate hope, and ingrained suspicion. Before he could respond, however, a new chakra signature flared at the clearing's edge, familiar, powerful, and decidedly unwelcome. How touching, Orochimaru observed, emerging from the tree-line with casual grace that belied his lethal capability. A Jinchuriki therapy session in the middle of combat. Quite the unconventional approach, Naruto-kun. Gaara's sand immediately responded to the new threat, swirling protectively around him as his momentary vulnerability vanished beneath renewed defensive hostility. Orochimaru, Naruto acknowledged, calculating rapidly diminishing options. With his chakra still disrupted by the five-element seal, facing the Sannin directly would be suicidal. His teammates had been successfully extracted by his shadow clones, but remained within the forest's boundaries, still potentially vulnerable if Orochimaru chose to pursue them. I must admit, your performance continues to exceed expectations, Orochimaru commented conversationally, as if discussing an interesting experiment rather than confronting children in mortal danger. First the momentary manifestation of the Rinne Sharingan, now this unusual dimensional technique and Biju communication ability. You represent a research opportunity almost comparable to the Uchiha boy. Did you find Sasuke? Naruto asked directly, gauging whether Orochimaru had succeeded in whatever objective had prompted him to pursue his teammate. A satisfied smile curved the Sannin's thin lips. Let's just say I left him with a parting gift. A seed that will grow in fascinating ways, given proper motivation. The implication was clear. Orochimaru had marked Sasuke somehow, likely with the cursed seal techniques Naruto had studied in restricted intelligence briefings. If accurate, this represented a significant long-term threat to both Sasuke personally and Konoha strategically. Before the confrontation could escalate further, sand erupted between them as Gaara made a unilateral decision. I don't know what you are, he directed at Orochimaru, but you reek of death and deception. Neither of you will confirm my existence today. A sandstorm engulfed the clearing, forcing both Naruto and Orochimaru into defensive positions. When visibility returned seconds later, Gaara had vanished, retreating with his siblings who had apparently been observing from concealed positions nearby. Orochimaru's expression registered momentary annoyance before settling back into amused calculation. Always complications, he sighed theatrically. Though they do make the game more interesting. His serpentine gaze fixed on Naruto with disturbing intensity. We'll continue our discussion another time, Naruto-kun. I have much to prepare before the next phase of these fascinating examinations. With that cryptic statement, the Sannin melted into the forest with unnatural fluidity, leaving Naruto alone in the devastated clearing. Nearly alone, Karen emerged cautiously from her observation position, her expression caught between scientific fascination and genuine concern. That was, she began, adjusting her glasses reflexively. I've never seen anything like that. The chakra exchange when you two UCHED him, it created a resonance pattern that temporarily synchronized your Biju frequencies. Her technical analysis provided welcome grounding after the intensity of the confrontations. An experimental technique, Naruto explained, conducting internal assessment of his remaining chakra capacity. Theoretically possible but practically dangerous. And apparently effective, Karen observed, PP roaching to examine him with clinical detachment that didn't entirely mask her concern. Though your chakra pathways show increased disruption patterns, that seal needs to be removed before permanent damage occurs. Agreed, Naruto acknowledged. But first, I need to rejoin my teammates and confirm their condition. Karen hesitated, internal conflict evident in her expression before she reached a decision. I could help with the seal, she offered finally. Uzumaki have natural aptitude for seal manipulation. I've studied what remains of our clan's techniques. The offer represented significant potential aid, though Naruto maintained appropriate caution. Despite their shared heritage, they had met mere hours ago under ambiguous circumstances. I appreciate the offer, he said carefully. But seal manipulation, especially involving Biju containment, requires specific expertise and controlled conditions. After we complete this examination stage, proper resources will be available. Karen nodded, accepting the diplomatic decline without apparent offense. Logical assessment. Though I should note, She gestured to his abdomen where Orochimaru's seal overlaid his existing containment structure. Your system is already showing adaptation patterns. The tertiary chakra network particularly seems to be integrating the disruption somehow. This observation aligned with what Naruto had begun to notice internally. Kaguya's chakra, normally dormant beneath his standard and Nine-Tails systems, had become more active following Orochimaru's interference, seemingly working to neutralize the disruptive seal through methods he couldn't consciously control. Noted, he acknowledged. Do you have a heaven scroll? The apparent non-sequitur momentarily confused Karen before understanding dawned. Yes, my team acquired one before they encountered another group. Her expression closed briefly. I'm the only survivor. The simple statement explained her presence one in the forest and her willingness to assist an unfamiliar shinobi from another village. With her team eliminated, her options for examination completion were severely limited. We have an Earth Scroll, Naruto informed her. Combining resources would benefit both of us. The proposal represented practical advantage and something more, recognition of their unexpected kinship and her vulnerable position. Karen studied him with carefully neutral expression that didn't quite conceal her relief at this potential alliance. A temporary cooperation agreement, she defined precisely, adjusting her glasses again. Mutual scroll exchange at the tower, followed by independent advancement through subsequent examination phases. Agreed, Naruto confirmed, appreciating her clear parameter estimable. Ishment, despite suspecting both, recognized this encounter represented something more significant than temporary tactical alliance. As they moved to rejoin his teammates, Naruto reflected on the complex web of connections this forest had unexpectedly revealed. Another Uzumaki discovered, a fellow Jinchuriki engaged through understanding rather than combat, and Orochimaru's ominous interest in both himself and Sasuke. The Chunin exams had transformed from assessment to inflection point, with consequences that would extend far beyond simple rank advancement. The central tower rose through morning mist as Team Kakashi approached its weathered stone architecture, their journey through the forest of death having consumed 3 of the allocated 5 days. Beside them walked Karen, her posture alert but less overtly defensive than when they had first encountered her. 2 teams approaching from the southeast, Hinata reported, Byakugan active as they neared their destination. 1 from the northwest. All appeared to be exam participants rather than potential threats. The qualifier reflected their heightened vigilance following multiple high-level encounters, first Orochimaru, then Gaara. Followed by a brief skirmish with a rain team desperate enough to attack despite recognizing the Uchiha and Hyuga crests. Sasuke maintained uncharacteristic silence, his normal tactical communicatio replaced by terse essentials since Orochimaru's gift had manifested as a distinctive 3-tomo mark on his neck. The cursed seal, as Naruto had identified it based on classified intelligence briefings, periodically pulsed with malevolent chakra that visibly taxed Sasuke's self-control. We should proceed directly to the tower, Naruto advised, monitoring both Sasuke's deteriorating conditia and the forest's multiple chakra signatures through his gradually recovering sensory abilities. The central security zone will provide necessary containment resources. The recommendation Aknal, DGED what all recognized but none had directly addressed. Sasuke's seal represented a security risk requiring specialized intervention beyond field measures. Naruto had applied temporary suppression techniques drawn from his Uzumaki heritage, but these provided limited effectiveness against Orochimaru's advanced manipulations. Agreed, Sasuke stated, the single word carrying layers of tightly controlled pain and frustration. As they crossed the final perimeter into the tower's security zone, automated systems triggered alerts regarding their arrival. Within minutes, they were met by Examinat Ion proctors who separated the arrivals for standard processing, identity verification, scroll confirmation, and preliminary medical assessment. When the proctors attempted to separate Karen from Team Kakashi, however, Naruto intervened with uncharacteristic assertiveness. She accompanies us, he stated, his typically formal tone carrying unexpected authority. Her status requires specialized consideration. The Chunin examiner blinked in surprise at being challenged by a genin half his age, but something in Naruto's steady gaze prompted him to seek guidance from his superior, who, upon closer inspection of documentation, confirmed Karen's unusual situation. Sole survivor of Kusagakure Team 3, the senior proctor noted. Irregular advancement approved through Scroll Alliance Protocol. He studied the unusual group thoughtfully before shrugging. Proceed to medical evaluation as a unit, then. Standard protocols otherwise apply. As they moved deeper into the tower's examination processing areas, Karen leaned closer to Naruto. That was unexpected, she murmured. I assumed we would separate upon arrival. Circumstances have changed, Naruto replied quietly. Orochimaru's interest in both of us, combined with our shared heritage, suggests continued cooperation offers mutual security advantages. The practical framing concealed what Naruto himself was only beginning to recognize. A protective instinct activated by discovering another Uzumaki, particularly one whose sensor abilities and medical knowledge represented significant tactical complementarity to his own capabilities. Their conversation ceased as they entered the medical evaluation chamber, where the atmosphere immediately shifted from standard examination processing to heightened alert. Waiting for them was not the expected medical nin team but a high-level reception committee. Kakashi and Jiraiya standing alongside two Anbu operatives whose masks Naruto recognized as denoting the Hokage's personal security detail. Well, this is unexpected, Jiraiya commented dryly, though his casual tone belied the intensity with which he scanned each of them, lingering particularly on Sasuke's neck where the Orst seal remained partially visible despite suppression techniques. When the perimeter sensors reported your chakra signatures accompanied by unauthorized patterns, we anticipated trouble. Not quite this variety, however. Kakashi stepped forward, his visible eye quickly assessing his team's condition. Status report, he requested simply. Naruto provided a concise briefing, Orochimaru's infiltration and objectives. Sasuke's cursed seal application, the 5-element seal disrupting Naruto's own chakra systems, their encounter with Gaara, and Karen's alliance with their team following her own team's elimination. With each revelation, the atmosphere in the chamber intensified, the implications escalating beyond standard examination complications into genuine security crisis. Orochimaru himself, Jiraiya muttered, expression darkening, targeting both the Uchiha heir and the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki during an international examination. The political ramifications alone. The seal requires immediate attention. Kakashi interjected, practicality overriding broader concerns as he examined the malevolent mark on Sasuke's neck. This design incorporates elements specifically keyed to Orochimaru's chakra signature. Standard suppression will prove inadequate. I can help, Karen offered unexpectedly, stepping forward despite the Anbu operatives' immediately heightened alertness. I have specialized training in chakra analysis and seal dynamics. And you are? Jiraiya questioned, studying the red-haired girl with sudden interest. Karen of Kusagakure, she replied formally. Then hesitated before adding with quiet certainty, Uzumaki by blood. The declaration caused visible reassessment from both Jiraiya and Kakashi, whose gazes shifted between Karen and Naruto with new understanding. Another Uzumaki, Jiraiya mused, his expression revealing complex calculations. Interesting timing. Her sensor abilities exceed standard parameters, Naruto added, supporting her offer of assistance. And she correctly identified the 5-element seal's disruption patterns in my chakra network without prior briefing. Jiraiya studied Karen with renewed assessment before nodding slightly. We'll discuss your Uzumaki heritage further, young lady. For now, let's address these seals before they cause additional complications. What followed was a complex medical and sealing intervention, with Sasuke removed to a specialized containment chamber for cursed seal suppression while Naruto underwent Jiraiya's counter-sealing to remove Orochimaru's 5-element disruption. Throughout both procedures, Karen was permitted to observe and occasionally consult, her insights regarding chakra flow patterns proving valuable despite initial security reservations. Hours later, W.I.T.H. Sasuke sedated following emergency seal containment and Hinata debriefing with Kurenai who had arrived to assess her student's condition, Naruto found himself in a quiet chamber with Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Karen. The atmosphere had shifted from crisis management to strategic assessment, with implications extending far beyond the immediate examination context. So, Jiraiya began, addressing Karen directly, another Uzumaki survivor. From one of the settlements in Grass Country, based on your documentation. Karen nodded, her posture professional despite evident exhaustion from the day's events. one of the smaller enclaves established after Uzushiogakur's fall. We maintained certain traditions and techniques, though much was lost with each generation. And you're the last? Kakashi asked quietly. A shadow passed across her features. As far as I know. The settlement was attacked 3 years ago, targeted specifically for our sealing knowledge. I survived by circumstance. Hesitation suggested trauma deliberately compartmentalized. Kusagaker integrated me into their shinobi program afterward. For your sensory abilities, Naruto observed, connecting fragmented information into coherent assessment. They recognized your value as a chakra sensor. Karen adjusted her glasses with a precise movement that Naruto now recognized as a self-soothing gesture. Yes, IP. Riveted perimeter security and infiltration detection. This examination was my first field deployment without direct handler supervision. The clinical description conveyed volumes about her treatment. Utilized for specialized capabilities rather than developed as a complete shinobi. An approach that paralleled how many villages treated their Jinchuriki, valuing function above personhood. Your abilities are indeed remarkable. Jiraiya acknowledged, particularly your chakra visualization precision. Few sensors can distinguish between layered network structures with such accuracy. The Acno W legend contained subtle testing, confirmation that she had indeed perceived Naruto's unusual chakra configuration, including aspects that remained classified. You mean his tertiary network, Karen stated directly, demonstrating both perceptiveness and willingness to address sensitive matters plainly. The one that's neither human nor Biju in structure. The one that's currently integrating Oro. Shimaru's disruption seal into itself rather than simply neutralizing it. This blunt assessment caused both Jiraiya and Kakashi to stiffen slightly, exchanging glances that confirmed the accuracy of her observation. What should have been a straightforward seal removal had revealed unexpected developments, Kaguya's dormant chakra responding to Orochimaru's interference in ways neither had anticipated. You have excellent observational skills, Kakashi noted carefully, neither confirming nor denying her assessment. Karen met his gaze directly. I have survival skills. Understanding what others prefer left unexamined has kept me alive since my settlement was destroyed. The statement established clear parameters. She recognized the sensitivity of what she had observed but would not pretend ignorance for their comfort. Naruto found himself appreciating her direct approach, so different from the diplomatic obfuscation that often characterized discussions of his unique condition. Your current status presents interesting questions, Jiraiya observed, changing direction slightly. With your team eliminated, your participation in further examination phases becomes procedurally complex. I've fulfilled Stage 2 requirements through Alliance protocols, Karen replied. Beyond that, I anticipated returning to Kusagaker for reassignment. An alternative might be considered, Naruto suggested. The proposal forming as he spoke. Temporary research attachment to Konoha's specialized sealing division. For examination conclusion and potential extension. The suggestion caused raised eyebrows from both adults. Though neither immediately dismissed it. Such arrangements occasionally occurred between allied villages, particularly involving specialized capabilities with mutual benefit potential. An interesting proposition, Kakashi noted. Though one requiring significant diplomatic consideration. I imagine Grass Country might be persuaded to see advantages, Jiraiya mused. His casual tone belying the strategic calculations evident in his expression. Particularly with appropriate compensation for temporarily reassigning a valuable asset. Throughout this exchange, Karen remained outwardly composed. Though Naruto, with his enhanced perception, detected subtle fluctuations in her chakra that suggested complex emotional responses to being discussed as a diplomatic commodity. The pattern resonated with his own experiences being evaluated for strategic value rather than personal autonomy. Perhaps, Naruto suggested quietly, Karen herself might have preferences regarding her assignment. The simple statement shifted the conversation's tone, acknowledging her agency in matters directly affecting her future. Karen glanced at him with momentary surprise before her expression settled into careful neutrality. My current assignment parameters prioritize acquiring advanced sealing knowledge, she stated precisely. Konoha possesses the most extensive Uzumaki archival materials remaining. Access to those resources would align with both my personal interests and my village's objectives. The diplomatic framing provided perfect coverage for what Naruto suspected. Ected represented deeper motivations, connection to remaining Uzumaki heritage and potential relationship with newfound clan members. Her careful navigation revealed both political acumen and personal adaptability. We'll explore the possibility, Jiraiya concluded, recognizing the multiple advantages such an arrangement might provide, from diplomatic leverage to keeping another Uzumaki within Konoha's sphere of influence. For now, standard examination protocols apply. The preliminary matches begin tomorrow. As the strategy session concluded and they prepared to return to their assigned quarters, Karen approached Naruto privately. That intervention wasn't necessary, she said quietly. I'm accustomed to being discussed in tactical terms. As am I, Naruto replied simply. Which is precisely why the intervention was appropriate. Something shifted in her expression, a momentary vulnerability quickly controlled. Is this how it works in Konoha? People actually asking what you want are other than simply assigning your function. Not always, Naruto acknowledged. But increasingly, in my experience, worth pursuing, regardless. The simple exchange crystallized something significant. Recognition of shared experience despite different villages and circumstances. Both had been valued primarily for function rather than personhood. Both carried Uzumaki heritage in a world where that lineage had nearly vanished. Both possessed specialized capabilities that made them simultaneously valuable and isolated. As they rejoined the main examination groups, preparation for the preliminary matches already underway. Naruto found himself considering the expanding web of connections these examinations had unexpectedly revealed, threads of fate drawing together patterns he couldn't yet fully discern but increasingly recognized as significant. Whatever emerged from these complex intersections would extend far beyond simple rank advancement or village politics. The convergence of Uzumaki survivors, Jinchuriki interactions, and Orochimaru's ominous manipulations suggested something larger unfolding, patterns perhaps connected to Kaguya's cryptic references to remembering and reunification. For now, however, the immediate challenges demanded focus, preliminary matches to navigate, Sasuke's sealed condition to monitor, and the broader implications of Orochimaru's infiltration to address. The threads would continue weaving their pattern regardless, connecting past to future through choices made in critical present moments. The preliminary match arena hummed with tension as CI pants gathered for the elimination round that would determine advancement to the final stage of the Chunin examinations. Medical teams had established treatment stations along the perimeter, while observation balconies filled with Jonin instructors and diplomatic observers from participating villages. Among the remaining participants, several drew particular attention, the Sand siblings standing in ominous isolation. Their dynamic altered by Gaara's uncharacteristically introspective demeanor following his encounter with Naruto, the Sound team watching proceedings with calculated intensity. That belied their supposed minor village status, and Team Kakashi, whose unconventional composition and rumored forest encounters had generated significant speculation. Sasuke stood with his teammates. The containment seals visible as intricate patterns extending from beneath his collar, emergency measures implemented by Jiraiya that suppressed Orochimaru's mark without fully neutralizing it. His expression remained carefully controlled, though periodic tension in his jaw revealed ongoing discomfort. Hinata maintained vigilant observation, her Byakugan periodically activating to assess chakra patterns throughout the gathering. The forest experiences had accelerated her development beyond standard parameters, her natural Hyuga abilities enhanced by specialized training with Naruto and Ombat application during their encounters. Naruto himself presented outward calm that concealed complex internal processes. Jiraiya's counter sealing had removed Orochimaru's 5-element seal, but as Karen had observed, the interaction had produced unexpected results. The tertiary chakra system, Kaguya's dormant energy, had somehow integrated aspects of the disruption, adapting rather than simply rejecting the foreign interference. The implications remained unclear, though Naruto had detected subtle shifts in his dimensional perception since the procedure. From the proctor's platform, Hayate Gecko explained the preliminary format between periodic coughs that suggested chronic respiratory issues. Matches will be determined by random selection, he concluded, gesturing toward the electronic display board. Victory conditions include opponent submission, unconsciousness, or my determination that the match has reached conclusive outcome. The display activated, names scrolling in random IZED patterns before settling on the first pairing, Sasuke Uchiha vs. Yoroi Akato. Interesting timing, Kakashi murmured from his position behind his team. Testing the seal's containment parameters immediately. Sasuke stepped forward with characteristic determination, though Naruto detected subtle irregularities in his chakra flow, evidence of the cursed seal's influence despite suppression measures. His opponent, a Konoha genin with concealed features and specialized chakra absorption abilities according to Kabuto's earlier intelligence, represented a particularly challenging matchup given Sasuke's compromised condition. The match revealed both Sasuke's extraordinary talent and his current limitations. Unable to access chakra freely without risking seal destabilization, he relied primarily on taijutsu adaptations of Lee's techniques witnessed prior to the examination, a strategic pivot that demonstrated his analytical capabilities even under extreme constraint. Victory, when achieved, came through physical skill rather than ninjutsu application, a significant departure from Sasuke's typical combat approach. As medical teams confirmed his condition following the match, the display cycled to the next pairing, Shino Aburame vs. Zaku Abumi. Subsequent matches proceeded with varying intensity, Kankuro defeating a Konoha genin through puppet techniques, Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka fighting to mutual elimination. Tamari demonstrating wind mastery against Tenten's weapons expertise. Each encounter revealed capabilities and limitations that would influence strategic considerations in the examination finals. When the display announced Hinata Hyuga vs. Neji Hyuga, a palpable shift occurred in the observation atmosphere. What might have been standard competition transformed immediately into something more significant, clan politics manifesting in combat between the main and branch house representatives. This is problematic, Kakashi observed quietly. Neji harbors significant resentment toward the main house. This match represents more than advancement for him. Naruto studied the older Hyuga's expression as Hinata descended to the arena floor, cold determination, underlaid with tightly controlled rage that suggested personal vendetta rather than professional competition. Having witnessed Hinata's growth firsthand through their specialized training, Naruto Riko Gnized both her substantial improvement and the psychological vulnerability Neji might exploit. She's stronger than he expects, Naruto noted, observing her centered chakra flow and composed demeanor. But he's operating from emotional drivers that exceed examination parameters. The assessment proved accurate as the match began with Neji launching not physical attacks but psychological warfare, targeting Hinata's former insecurities with precision that suggested intimate knowledge of her developmental struggles. Yet where such tactics might once have devastated her confidence, Hinata remained composed. Her response measured and unexpectedly assertive. "You see what you expect to see, cousin," she replied to his cutting assessment, activating her Byakugan with fluid grace that reflected hundreds of hours of specialized practice. But expectations can blind as easily as they reveal. The exchange set the tone for what followed, not the one-sided demonstration Neji had clearly anticipated, but a sophisticated gentle fist engagement between practitioners with divergent philosophical approaches. Where Neji employed textbook precision with aggressive intent, Hinata demonstrated adaptations developed through her training with Naruto, fluid transitions between standard Hyuga techniques and innovative variations that occasionally caught her opponent off guard. She's integrated circular energy flow patterns, Karen observed from her position nearby, having gravitated toward Team Kakashi despite her official grass affiliation. Non-standard for Hyuga techniques, more reminiscent of Uzumaki chakra circulation principles. The astute observation confirmed what Naruto had recognized. Hinata had adapted certain concepts from their joint training sessions, incorporating Uzumaki-derived chakra flow patterns into her clan techniques. The hybridization created momentary openings in Neji's otherwise superior technical execution. Despite these innovations, however, the fundamental difference in experience and natural capability gradually asserted itself. Neji's precision strikes began accumulating effect, his superior reach and power creating increasing disadvantage for Hinata despite her tactical adaptability. The match reached critical juncture when Neji landed a particularly devastating strike to Hinata's chest, targeting the heart region with potentially lethal intent. Her momentary faltering created opportunity for finishing combination, a sequence of strikes that would have incapacitated most opponents instantly. Instead, something unexpected occurred. Hinata's chakra briefly flared with unusual coloration, a flash of lavender-tinted energy that disrupted Neji's attack sequence just enough to allow her defensive recovery. The momentary manifestation vanished almost immediately, but its effect provided critical breathing room in what had become dangerously asymmetrical combat. Naruto stiffened in recognition, the implications immediately apparent. During their extended training sessions, Hinata's constant Byakugan observation of his chakra systems had apparently created more than analytical understanding. Some aspect of Kaguya's energy had resonated with her own chakra, creating potential for momentary manifestation under extreme stress. "Did you see that?" Karen whispered, her sensor abilities having detected the anomalous energy signature. "Her chakra briefly harmonized with your tertiary system pattern." "Yes," Naruto acknowledged quietly, monitoring carefully as the match continued. Unintended consequence of prolonged exposure during specialized training. Though the momentary chakra manifestation had created brief advantage, Hinata's physical condition had deteriorated too significantly for sustained recovery. With genuine regret visible beneath his determination, Neji executed a final combination that rendered her unconscious despite her remarkable resilience. As medical teams rushed to stabilize Hinata's condition, Naruto found himself processing complex implications. The brief chakra manifestation represented unintended transmission of Kaguya's energy, something previously considered impossible given its highly specialized nature. If prolonged exposure during training sessions had created this possibility, what other unforeseen consequences might develop among those in regular proximity to his increasingly active abilities? Subsequent matches proceeded with standard examination intensity, though Naruto maintained divided attention, monitoring Hinata's medical treatment while analyzing the capabilities demonstrated by potential finals opponents. When the display finally announced Naruto Uzumaki vs. Kiba Inuzuka, he descended to the arena floor with measured composure that contrasted with his opponent's enthusiastic confidence. "Lucky draw for me," Kiba declared, Akamaru barking agreement from his position atop his partner's head. "I get to show everyone the difference between academy graduates and whatever special program they put you through." Quote, Naruto assessed his opponent dispassionately, excellent coordination with his Ninken partner, enhanced sensory capabilities, combat style emphasizing speed and overwhelming force rather than tactical precision. Under normal circumstances, a straightforward engagement requiring moderate effort at most. Current circumstances, however, remained far from normal. The recent chakra system disruptions, followed by Kaguya's energy integrating aspects of Orochimaru's seal, had created unpredictable variables in Naruto's technique execution. Combined with the Hokage's continued directive for capability discretion, this match required carefully calculated performance parameters. "Begin," Hayate announced, jumping clear as Kiba immediately launched aggressive opening combination. Smoke bombs creating visual cover for coordinated physical assault from multiple angles. Rather than standard defense, Naruto employed subtle sensory extension to track movement through the obscuring smoke, calculating interception points with mathematical precision. When Kiba and Akamaru emerged from opposite directions for pincer attack, Naruto executed perfectly timed side step that caused them to narrowly miss their target. An economy of movement that demonstrated advanced spatial awareness without revealing specialized capabilities. "Standing still won't save you for long," Kiba growled, recovering quickly from the failed opening assault. Akamaru, man-beast clone. The Ninken transformed into perfect duplicate of his partner, both attacking with coordinated fang over fang technique. Rotating with such velocity they became virtual drills capable of shredding standard defenses. Naruto monitored the attack vectors with sensory precision, waiting until the last possible moment before executing minimal necessary evasion, allowing the techniques to pass close enough to disturb his clothing without causing actual damage. The calculated risk demonstrated superior threat assessment while maintaining the appearance of narrow escape rather than overwhelming capability. "You're faster than you look," Kiba acknowledged, reassessing his approach. But speed won't help against what comes next. What followed was progressively escalating assault, Kiba employing soldier pills to enhance both his and Akamaru's capabilities, increasing their already substantial speed and strength to levels that would overwhelm most genin defenses. Their coordinated attacks became increasingly difficult to evade through standard movement, forcing Naruto to incrementally reveal more advanced capabilities. Shadow clones provided momentary distractions while subtle chakra enhancement improved his reaction time beyond standard genin parameters. Throughout the exchange, Naruto maintained careful calculation, demonstrating sufficient skill to justify victory without revealing capabilities that would attract undue attention or contradict his official development narrative. The match concluded when Naruto identified pattern weakness in Kiba's attack sequence, a momentary recovery delay following particularly intensive Fang-over-Fang combination. Exploiting this opening with precision timing, he executed counter-sequence that separated Kiba from Akamaru before applying incapacitating hold that forced submission without unnecessary damage. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.